Welcome back, everybody, to set 2 of NA week number 1 in the SCC. My name is Dolson. Goremizer joins me to talk Locked and Goated versus the Houdinis. Gore, I think that this is a pretty anticipated matchup. We saw a lot of the Houdinis in the last week of the qualifying, fully moving in from the group stages to the full-blown SCC. But you looked at Locked and Goated. This is a roster I think that we haven't seen in a while because they qualified so early, and they're maybe one of the more difficult teams in this region.
And I think the last time we really got to see them, again, you go back to last week's broadcast, like we in studio had broadcast a bunch of the Group B matches from Europe and NA, and then later if you had watched it, there were some Group A matches, and well, realistically, it's because this team, as well as like Baskin and the boys, just kind of slaughtered everybody they went up against. It was nothing but 2-0s for them. So a relatively easy path for them, somewhat, for them to get here. And now it's going to be the very interesting way to see how they're going to be able to hold up now that everybody's kind of put themselves together.
And I'm really intrigued, honestly, moving into picks and bans, because, yesterday we got to see a good bit of, the European meta and how that shifted around. Not quite as much of the Baron Samdi yesterday that I was hoping to see in that solo lane, but do you imagine that, the two metas sort of stay kind of where they're at? EU kind of has their specific play style, slow and steady around those Furies, around the Fire Giants, and a bit of a different mindset.
I'm going to say yes, but only because after, 4 or 5 years of watching Smite, maybe longer actually, now that I'm thinking about the fact that it's 2020, my mind is still mentally set in 2018, but it's always been that way. North America's always been a little more aggressive, a little more willing to take those risks, and admittedly, it has punished them in a lot of these areas.
Yeah.
I think more recently, like, you look at the early days of Smite, it didn't pay off as much. A lot of EU victors in the World Championship and, like, the launch tournament. But they've started to, the meta's changed up. The pace has changed up enough that I think it'll be interesting to see how aggressive they get, but it's still going to be aggressive. It's always going to be aggressive, and I love it that way.
Well, of course, a quick side note, Houdini's picked up by Elevate, so Houdini's is Elevate. That's why you see them in the left side of your screen there. Moving into picks and bans, though, Hoonbot's not surprising at all. I think the only thing that really jumps out there, maybe some jungle solo lane priority from Locked and Goated, but the Hebo is something I'm not used to seeing in that ban column.
Look, I will always say it, Hebo is the god that got me into Smite in the first place. The first one I got to Diamond, or at that point it was just rank 10, and you got your legendary skin. But I will always be happy seeing him somewhere down on the ban screen or on the pick screen. He does a lot of damage, and honestly, in this meta, in jungle specifically, he can bring a ton to the table. And while he's not going to bring, I think, the same palpability that you're going to get out of like a Hunbats who can jump in or blink in and maybe have a little bit more control for your mid laner, he's just going to blow you up. So he's got a lot of damage to bring out.
Yeah, certainly worthwhile to take away if you're not intending to play him. Elevate, though, Gore, they have gotten themselves a few priority picks in the first 3. Thor has not so much been the flavor of the month in the ban so much. I think early on in SCC qualifying, he was banned out a good bit.
Makes them
a little bit less so now. But I'm still loving a Yamoja Odin Thor 3-stack to start off my draft.
Yeah, we've seen like Thor specifically, especially through qualifying, didn't perform as well compared to where he was picked. Like a lot of picks and bans for him. Then he had like a 30%, maybe lower win rate through those qualifying games. So it's definitely on Elevate to showcase what this Thor can do. But Odin, that range stun has made him so good in the duo lane. Yamoja, assuming that Odin isn't taking that spot, the sustain she brings over there is going to be great. But the best thing about both of them is they can flex on either side of the map. And so it does leave ambiguity even though both of them are locked in.
Well, the question, of course, then, is you pick up this Thor, and I like the way you kind of worded that. Didn't quite see the impact you had hoped, and it's all about once you hit that ultimate level, you're suddenly ganking, you're dropping in when not expected. So I look for Elevate to really take full use of that Thor, though. All 10 bans are in. Freya, another god that we haven't seen all that much, Gore. And with the Chernobog picked up as well, that could be long lane or middle lane for both of them.
Yeah, although I will say Freya is a little more, at this point, especially with the pace of the game, I think she fits better in the long lane, going duo, getting more farm, because early game, she's not going to give you a lot of pressure. And while I think Thor is going to maybe help counter that, I think if you could send Freya over there and just let her farm for a while, and then the next time she joins the fight is 5 items in, she will decimate anybody who stands in her way. Chernobog fits that mid lane role just a little bit better as well. So Elevate, I still love it no matter what because it's so ambiguous.
I agree. It's going to be a fun one. Lots of fun gods locked in here between Locked and Goated and Elevate. So let's jump in to game number 1 and see how all of this plays out. And kind of to talk more about that Freya Gore, I mean, that's kind of a god that you need a little ramp up time. But once you get to that, maybe mid-late game, even some in the early game, you can definitely trade. But I'm nervous about a late game Freya once she's gotten online.
And you should be. I mean, there's a reason, like, there were so many memes about Freya for so many years because, admittedly, when her cooldowns pretty much level, I would argue level 15, level 16 plus in the game, does she have pulse up? If so, bad news bears for you, dude. You're not going to live through that engagement in a 1v1 unless you have a lot of CC, which Ẓtuart actually being able to come into this matchup will be able to control it. The problem is going to be the damage output she has as well. Ẓtuart definitely will be able to pick up a rage early on, which will help him kind of counter that and keep up with Nesfor. But my eyes are on Nesfor to kind of spring from not being mentioned from, this point to the next 15 minutes, and then all of a sudden being the talk of the town.
Well, talk about an obnoxious duo lane to go up against, right? I mean, not only do you have the Freya who can, effectively trade, but a lot of that is on the back of Shiaaaaa, who's going to have so much lockdown. A lot of healing and sustain in that Umoja.
And I love seeing Umoja because the sustain that you mentioned is probably one of the biggest things. Health plus shielding, which is going to help in moments like that in case someone gets aggressive. But it's also the stun from the Moonstrike, the damage that she's going to be able to have. If you want, you have a kind of technical dash to be able to go forward, but I'm surprised to see Locked and Goated are the more aggressors.
Yeah, they're level up and getting more aggressive here. They reached level 2 first, just followed up by the Elevate duo lane there. And, all of our conversation has been around the Umoja and the Freya, but it's Quig and Ẓtuart who have found themselves, about a half a level lead now. They've been able to effectively push out these waves.
I mean, my eyes are going to be on them. Again, Freya does not have the best early clear, and I think the fact that you've got Xing with a Houdini on the side of Locked and Goated, it doesn't necessarily write you a death sentence, but your farm is getting written a death sentence. You can get out of the engagement, you have the sustain and the shield, but there's not going to be enough, I think, that's going to help you counteract it. That's why things like an Alpha Harpy invade, maybe even a purple buff invade here soon for Locked and Goated is on the table and honestly super viable to get them a decent lead.
And I think we have talked about Elevate's composition and how strong it is, and for good reason. I mean, they have a 5 stack of gods, that you're nervous to play against 7 days out of the week. You look over towards Locked and Goated, though, where maybe some of their strong suits. This Vamana, I think, is very good at getting into that back line. If he's not able to be dealt with, he can make life difficult for some of the backliners that we've thought are good for Elevate. Where do you maybe shine a spotlight for their composition?
Pretty much exactly where you just did, right? You put Vamana in the backline, specifically late game, he can stick to Freya. Unless there's some really strong anti-heal that's going to have to come on late game for Elevate, RelentlessOne's going to be able to ideally force Bayroneri or Nesfor out of the fight. Either one is going to be a big win for them, and that's going to cause a lot more pressure to fall onto the solo lane. And we've seen what Vamana can do, right? If there's not a Divine Ruin, a Brawler's Beat Stick, a Curse Ankh, and 3 people looking at him, he can kind of get away with murder. And that's a big amount of a checklist to box off of your Elevate for a late game team fight.
Yeah, I bring up Flavor of the Month and how Thor has, kind of come in and out, but I think Vamana is starting to really become that flavor for a lot of the solo laners in this league. I think Odin, when he makes it through picks and bans, is another worthwhile pickup, and a lot of teams tend to agree, for good reason. You point out he's so powerful. But Vamana, I think, has really started to put himself in this meta, and it's being able to mitigate a lot of that I think some teams have difficulty with. But some more interesting picks, though, on Locked and Goated. Cyno moving over to this Bakasura, and I think we all know what he can do. Again, if you talk about late game, you jump into the backline onto some squishies, there's plenty of true damage in that Bakasura that can melt some carries.
I'm looking for Locked and Goated to have 2 members total that are going to be just kind of sticking onto the back line of Elevate. And Cyno is going to be maybe the biggest one to cause that, just because of the fact that this Bakasura, for I don't know how long in Smite, has been known for that. I think his ult is really good at slowing people down. Typically, we used to see what was Fatalis. Now you would probably see something like a Hasten Katana, which he just now picks up to be able to keep him on top of whoever he's chasing down. Not going to be a huge power spike, so you're going to see him take a little bit of time, but having that haste, every single attack he hits allows him to kind of forego that movement penalty and stick to him. Bayroneri, SpreeeN, Nesfor, all going to have difficulty getting away from him. SpreeeN has the best of it since he has the teleport. Bayroneri has the dash. Freya just kind of has to hope that if she banishes him after the jump and not before to keep Cyno away from him.
We're just starting to hit that level 5 and level 6, and you expect the team fights to maybe start sprouting out here as the ultimates are online. Bayroneri has to use his ultimate to get out of this fight, which he does. Back down he goes, so he's safe here. Good timing on the ultimate to keep him safe, and well thought out there, I think, by Locked and Goaded. They got aggressive at the right time. They used some ultimates of their own as well, but no kills on the board just yet.
It's a little slower. You could tell RelentlessOne wanted to get something going, but that's kind of the biggest deal. And honestly, this is just going to be the early game Vamana. He can do decent damage, but he's really going to be relying heavily on Cyno, Pegon, Ẓtuart, someone to do a lot of damage. And Ẓtuart's not going to be rotating out of this duo lane for any time soon. But you're really looking at this mid lane, this Discordia, having to kind of step up and be that damage for the team.
And Gore, you know, we kind of talked about the Hasten Katana a little bit. You brought it up with Cyno. I mean, normally, in my eyes, and this is just from what I've seen built, it tends to be kind of that second, maybe third item online. Cyno, though, opting for it first overall here. Does that maybe tell you that he's looking to get aggressive early and often in this game?
Well, it's weird because Baka, first off, Baka doesn't feel right unless you have hastened on. Like, for the first, like, however long it takes for you to farm it up to get it, maybe you say 5 minutes, depending on where you put it in the slot. That's like the earliest. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, depending on how late you decide to build it. It just doesn't feel right not having no movement penalty. But the problem is, as you kind of point out, he has no boots right now. He has no power spike, nothing to really get him going there. And it looks like he might forego the boots altogether. So this is in Cyno's eyes, and honestly, this is kind of how it works for Bakasura. It's get onto your target and then stick to your target.
Well, SpreeeN is going to look to get on to RelentlessOne. Odin Cage locks in RelentlessOne, who tries to dash away, but no good this time. Heeed finally finds first blood about 7 minutes into this game.
And just showcasing why Thor's so good. Semi-global ult, you're in the middle of the jungle, slam down on whatever lane you need to get to. And that, honestly, should start opening a lot of eyes. And Xing Quig going for a big toss.
That's a nice double. 3 men capitalizing from Locked and Goaded. Cyno, he finds the first kill in this engagement. A couple feared out, but Bayroneri comes right back down into the waiting arms of Elevate, but they're not able to capitalize. SpreeeN was there for a little bit of peel at the end, but it's still a 1 for none to answer back.
Now Ẓtuart looking to get aggressive. I love this, just all-out aggression from each side. Nesfor going to be forced to run away. As he's going for the stun, he's looking for the kill.
Yeah, he tried to use the beat, or he did use the beat, but maybe a little bit too early there. As cooldown, or ability rather, on cooldown. Knock up from Quig, slams back down. Nesfor, he's back to base. That's kill number 2 here for Locked and Goaded. Things could go from bad to worse here. Cyno just found a low health SpreeeN. It looks like this one might just fizzle. Locked and Goaded, though, find another kill, this time on Nesfor.
And I like that. A little ward over the wall to see, 1, if they're being aggressive to look for the red buff, and 2, maybe SpreeeN could have thrown out a hammer to try and find a kill there. That, it just felt like a switch flicked on both sides there for a second, where both teams decide, you know what, now's the time to get aggressive. And honestly, at the end of the day, it's Locked and Goaded coming out on top. You lose your solo laner for first blood. That's going to give a small advantage to Elevate, but then 2 clean kills, 1 onto your jungler, and 1 that admittedly went to your support, but was facilitated by your carry here. And Ẓtuart, especially the fact that it went against Nesfor, has set him behind now 2 levels.
Yeah, 2 levels.
Lane for the 2E. So it's cultivating a very comfortable lead. If you want to shut down a Freya, this is how you do it.
Again, especially on a god that, you know, we bring up, you need to get her ramping up toward, it takes some ramp up time to really get her effective. Super impactful on a lot of these fights, so to get her 2 levels behind just early on is going to be tough. But I imagine that Nesfor will benefit from kind of the way we've seen this meta shift, where once the supports hit that ultimate level, they start to rotate a little bit more. So he should be a little bit safe to sit back and just kind of farm. But with those beads down, Gore, this could be a re-gank potential for Locked and Goaded.
Beads down and Quig just nearby. That's all that really matters. As long as Quig is in the area, it doesn't matter if he has blink, it's still 20 seconds before it comes back. but he can jump in, he can lock you down, he can even do it to someone like Shiaaaaa here. He's gonna force the River's Rebuke.
River's Rebuke goes up, but it's just a feel for himself. A couple trembled out, but I'm not sure it gets him back to safety. Quig just needs a little bit more damage up down from Ẓtuart to get him out of this fight. Nesfor, he rejoins. He's found some damage, and Ẓtuart, he heads back to the Titan. Locked and goaded. They're on the run here. A couple of blinks exchanged and elevates. They tie up the kills and maybe looking for gold here.
Well, now that they know Quig's low, Cyno's low, blinks are down, this is a free gold fury for them. So Elevate being able to kind of confirm that one. I mean, there was no definitive lead, I want to say, for either of these squads going into these last couple of fights, but now Elevate admittedly are the ones in control of the pace of the game. Taking fights like that are going to be huge. Forcing ults like that is going to be huge, and I think it's going to slow down Locked and Goaded enough to make them rethink some of these engagements.
Right, it's almost the intangibles. The gold lead is effectively nothing. I think it was 90 or something when Doug pulled it up, and it's really just sort of how it feels. Yeah, 300, and that'll change quickly depending on where the waves crash. But it just feels like Elevate now have kind of tilted back into control of this game. I think SpreeeN has done a good job of rotating into a lot of these fights. Bayroneri as well has used some of that ultimate mobility to be in the right place at the right time. And now you look at Nesfor, who died just a moment ago. He's able to grab a kill, and that's so impactful for that Freya to get a little bit more gold, a little bit of XP. Still level down, but it's no longer that 2-level deficit.
And that's exactly what it is, right? Now, not even a full level down, as you can see him matching level 10. You'll see Ẓtuart tick up to 11 way faster than Nesfor, but that's where that equalization came out. It was about 700 total experience separating these teams as opposed to what we saw before, and that makes a huge difference for Freya to stay in. Quig, again, they're trying to get aggressive, but with the River's Rebuke and now Quig's ult down, I don't know if Locked and Goaded have the same pressure they want.
I think she has done a great job of slowing down these fights, but SpreeeN, he wants to press on the gas. One knocked down, that's Quig. Xing now out of this fight. The cage drops through from Odin. Bayroneri finds the second kill in this fight. RelentlessOne has to use that Colossal Fury, but he's just going to try to escape with it, and he will not. Bayroneri, after the big double kill for him, a 3 for none, and Elevate, they extend this lead.
And honestly, that should be Pyromancer. They have low health bars and not a lot of sustain on their side right now, outside of Shiaaaaa, who needs to rotate over and maybe help him out. So they're going to have to tank this properly, but enough damage that's going to be 2 big objectives in a row for Elevate. 2 big team fight wins in a row for them. And a lot of it is coming down to the fact that, again, Locked and Goaded, I think, are biting off more than they can chew early on. Quig's trying to go for 2 or 3 members at once, ends up dropping it, ends up putting himself in a bad spot to try and get it, and then it's just cleanup crew from Elevate.
It seems like they have these team fights kind of figured out. I mean, Shiaaaaa uses that River's Rebuke, sometimes aggressively, sometimes just to peel for himself, but it's just enough of a delay to kind of put Locked and Goaded in an awkward spot. And I think you have to look at SpreeeN as well. No kills, but 100% kill participation from the Thor. And that's where we saw the Thor kind of go down in the win rate and down in the ban rate, is when he wasn't able to have this early game impact. SpreeeN has done that, and that's maybe even an understatement, impacting every kill that Elevate has had.
And it's moments like, hey, Odin wall is up, but they can still move around. He locks them literally between his Thor wall and the Odin wall, so you're sandwiched into this small area, and you can't get out of there. Meanwhile, if you get caught out like that when Cyno finds you, you just teleport past the wall.
SpreeeN suddenly maybe caught out beneath his tier 1. RelentlessOne uses his ultimate, so he's going to be a free kill onto SpreeeN and a free escape as well. So well played there. Maybe sticking around just a little bit too long is SpreeeN. That's, I think, a bit of a lifeline for Locked and Goaded just to get RelentlessOne back onto the board.
Honestly, Vamana with ult up and blink ready, and not only ready, but willing to use it just to try and chase you down. I don't know if there's any place SpreeeN could have been that was safe for him. Nesfor right now getting aggressed on. Half health, but turning it around.
Ẓtuart's already used his jump. Bayroneri's here to help out. No chance Ẓtuart gets out of that one alive. Nesfor grabs the kill, but blink in through from Quig. Spins around 1. Whirlwind Rage and Steel is going to be enough to capitalize on that kill, but now you're locked down by 2 members of Elevate. He has to double dash if need be, but now it's back on cooldown, low health, but he escapes with his life, so they at least trade out 1, but Nesfor back on the board with his second kill.
Now, I didn't see it thrown out, so I don't think I saw a heal come out from Shiaaaaa. May have just missed it, honestly, or may have not come through, or may not have bounced to Nesfor. But Omi, its regeneration rate, which is going to be stacked based on your mana, and, well, just how well you use it is going to be very big for Yemoja. It's been the breaking point we've seen for a lot of players who have picked her up. And even though she is a top ban, top pick, sometimes we see her lose just because of moments like that where maybe she doesn't come through in the way you want her to. And as of right now, or at least in that engagement, Shiaaaaa ran out a little too fast, didn't have enough. And ultimately, it ends up kind of hurting the team.
And I saw Cyno, I mean, just earlier before that engagement, I mean, just sort of a pivot back to that Bakasura. We're curious about maybe we're going the boots, but I guess when you kind of build out of that Katana treaty, you're going to get extra mobility anyway.
Yeah.
There, the Hasten Katana with that stone cutting sword, you know, despite not having quite the same impact as SpreeeN has had on that Thor, this Bakasura, in those right moments, he's going to be able to pour out the damage pretty quickly with the way his current build is.
Yeah, now he's picked up the Atalanta's bow on top of that. Like, so Bakasura, the only way I can describe him is this anomaly in Smite where you're not looking, like, this is a standard build for him, right? It's not going to be, hey,
right,
he requires boots like it does, although he will be feeling the slowness. It's going to be a lot of chase people down and stretch protections, like you said, with the stone cutting sword. Attack speed's really big for him. Everything that can keep him locked onto you is going to be big.
Well, the momentum maybe still on Elevate's side, but just takes one fight where Cyno is kind of let off the leash, then he can make a big impact. Bayroneri very low, has to use the ultimate. The SpreeeN slams down back into this fight. Apple tossed out by Pegon, doesn't find anyone. That's a double toss back. Shiaaaaa, he's locked away from the rest of this fight as Ẓtuart has found the kill onto Bayroneri. That was the end-all be-all of that ultimate. But unfortunately, he only finds that one down now. Locked and goaded, looking for the dive. Elevate there low. Heeed, he falls as well. Low health bars on the final two. Nesfor is just going to play Peel, but what a turnaround. This gets Locked and Goated right back in this game.
And my eyes immediately eclipse on Fire Giant. It seems like Locked and Goated are of the same mind. The problem is moments like this. Nesfor can absolutely not only take this fight, but win that fight with the amount of damage he has. RelentlessOne should be able to escape, but SpreeeN is in the area. Doesn't have his ult, but still able to teleport in and try to steal if he wants.
Bring this close by. Might have the damage. Not in time, though. Locked and Goated. Lock that one up. And that's a big shift in this game as well, especially when, you know, a few minutes ago we were talking about how it just felt like Elevate were in control, and they no longer are. You can see the XP and the gold crashing down towards the Locked and Goated side of this one, and now you can feel the palpable shift over towards them. What do you make of Pegon on this Discordia, though? Have you quite seen what you've expected out of that? I mean, Bayroneri has made some pretty good rotations, 1 and 3 on that one. Pegon, though, at 0-0-2 has just kind of played Peel in some of these fights.
I'll just say, and letting his player damage speak for itself, 6,800's pretty solid for him. The only thing I've noticed, and this is something that it's, honestly, you just need practice against the emoji to find out. If you're a Huyi or a Discordia on the same side as her, your ult's going to fly right through River's Rebuke, or your Ricochet if you're Huyi. On the opposite side, you can use that to bounce those things around. So I've seen him throw, Pegon specifically, throw his ult on the outside and have it reflected by those walls, but if he can get it inside, it's almost a guaranteed hit onto somebody, get some of that damage around. It'll be interesting to see how that translates, because his damage is good so far. The Divine Ruin's going to be incredibly helpful for them as they go to try and fight specifically against that Yamoja. I think he's going to just become more and more important, and again, right now, number 2 on the player damage roll, I think he's doing a lot.
I agree, yeah, it's sort of that differential between the kills and the assists popping up and just doing enough to give your team a chance in some of these fights, a lot of it maybe coming up in the previous one. This is a big, I think, turn for Locked and Goated here. They've got the Oni waves pushing as well as Fire Giant for another 2 minutes and some change. This is where I think you maybe start to see that gold lead really start to shift. It was about 3K, but once these tier 2 towers fall, some open Phoenixes as well, you're looking at a much steeper decline, especially if Locked and Goated maybe look for an engage.
And XP still big on the board. I mean, 9,000 is a huge lead. Cyno is 3 levels over SpreeeN, as you can see right there. So the jungle is very significantly ahead. The duo lane has regained that lead here for Ẓtuart. And so it's making it a little more difficult for Elevate to win some of these fights. That being said, Nesfor finished off the Bancross Talon, has finished off 1 ring, is looking to start up another. He's hitting that power curve, which is enough to maybe keep you afloat in this, but you need Bayroneri to start going huge. SpreeeN admittedly did a ton early on, just hasn't been able to do too much on these last couple of engagements. Specifically, he's been targeted out. Those are where my eyes go to as big turnarounds, because right now objectives, all in favor of Locked and Goated. They got the Fire, they got the Fury, and they just got that Pyromancer.
Well, you know when the shift was for SpreeeN is the moment I said, he had a great impact on the early part of the
Oh yeah,
game.
naturally.
I mean, that's,
yeah.
It's purely my fault, so I apologize to anyone rooting for Elevate in this one. But Pyromancer one more time locked down by Locked and Goaded. The final tier 2 tower on the right-hand side of the map is standing. Heeed is kind of just hanging out over here and over the wall. RelentlessOne knows where he is. He's going to drop down. That's Cyno who's locked down in this fight, but plenty of heal and a big stun in the backline. Big ult from Tian's going to lock off a few as well. SpreeeN finds the double tap onto Cyno. Ẓtuart obliterated as well. 5 members strong from Elevate, chasing down the final 3 members of Locked and Goaded. Heeed, nice cage, locks into Pegon. Just going to try to dash out, and there's a stun from SpreeeN to lock him down one more time. Pegon, back to base you go. Quig, he's looking nervous here as well. What a fight from Elevate. They engage at the perfect time.
I mean, they had 1 minute of Fire Giant to kill, and the best way to kill 1 minute of Fire Giant is to kill them for 1 minute. If Quig goes down here, it'll be one of the last of the buffs. SpreeeN even lives through that tier 2, doesn't get hit by that last shot. So gorgeous for them. RelentlessOne loses his buff right now. He was over there and is currently over there kind of proxying, but it was the dunk from SpreeeN that started this off that I think really turned that one around. Cyno and Ẓtuart both collapsed and stunned on. Cyno immediately chased down, and once you get rid of the jungler, especially in a lot of these engagements, it's kind of just a ricochet of damage there. Pegon was the last one to get picked up. It became so discordant from Locked and Goaded that there was just no synergy, nothing to fall back on, no one to rely on to help keep you safe.
Yeah, it seems like the complete presence of synergy there for Elevate. They find the beautiful 2-man stun into the River's Rebuke. SpreeeN crashes down to follow up on that stun, and the rest of the fight kind of speaks for itself in that one. Still a gold lead, though, for Locked and Goaded, but they're nursing it here in this case. A lot of that maybe through the towers. They have 3 more taken down, where Elevate only has 1 standing. Locked and Goaded still have 4. You still maybe have Locked and Goaded in control of this one. Fire Giant is the next one that's up. I think Elevate, you have to contest.
And not only you have to contest, you're actually in a good position. With the way that last fight went, you've showcased that you can take and pick apart Locked and Goaded. It's just the question of whether or not you can do it not under a tier 2 versus, you know, in the Fire Giant pit, right? You have a little extra defense. You have an objective that they're specifically going for in Locked and Goaded in that tier 2 on the right lane that you just defended.
Yep.
Fire Giant is a clear objective that they're going to be going for, but the pit has a lot more accessibility and a lot more little narrow avenues for players to kind of dance around. It makes it difficult for them to lock them down the way they did around that tier 2. It's how they engage, specifically with SpreeeN, where Heeed will use his ult to try and get those Odin walls around. There's a lot of push and pull here for Elevate. But honestly, if they can just do it half as good as they did that defense, I have faith in them.
Well, Cyno's rotated over to that Gold Fury as Elevate actually backs themselves off from the Fire Giant pit. So this is going to be a free Gold Fury over to Locked and Goaded. Elevate may know now that Cyno is not in this fight. Look for the quick engagement, but I think smartly Locked and Goaded are going to play a little bit more passively. So a smart play there from Locked and Goaded to extend that gold lead just a little bit further.
It's just enough right now where if Elevate can get all of the towers that are on the map, so theoretically that's with a Fire Giant, then the gold lead starts to pretty much equalize out. But this is where Locked and Goaded can kind of win the long con. You sneak a Gold Fury like that, you have the timer on the Pyromancer, and admittedly, you have more people on the right-hand side of the map in a good position. If Shiaaaaa goes down here, that's bad for Elevate.
Well, Bayroneri's not here, but can ult back into this fight if he needs to. RelentlessOne has found a free few members of Elevate, but the Colossal Fury won't find much here at Gormizer, so that's down now for the rest of this fight. Whirlwind of Rage and Steel as well is just going to be used to peel for his team. SpreeeN takes to the sky, slams on down, stuns out 1 here, and that's Quig who's getting melted away. Are they able to finish off the kill? Nesfor says yes, the Spraya is starting to hit plenty hard. 3 members backing off from the Discordia apple here that Pegon tosses out. Fight continues. Quig is down though. Important ultimates. Only Cyno has his big 3-man knockup there. Can they capitalize on any damage? Nesfor has to use the actives. RelentlessOne and Cyno. Look at that Hasten Katana doing plenty of work. That's a big kill there for the Bakasura. RelentlessOne has one as well. What a turnaround in this fight. A double kill for that Bakasura. SpreeeN is going to trade out for 1. This is sloppy Gormizer. Locked and Goaded have found themselves at least 3 kills.
Yeah, it's 3 for 2 as of right now. Ẓtuart in a dangerous position. Cyno coming in to help him out. This honestly might be enough to turn it around. He has just enough help. They smack. They end up going down 1 for 1, and then Heeed picks up another. So 3 for 4 at the end of the day, assuming Ẓtuart makes it out alive. That's a good way to stall a fire giant.
Quig died at the very beginning of that fight, and with 50 some odd second death timers, was spawning at the end of that fight. That one went a long time, and it was the junglers, I think, towards the end that made a big difference there.
Yeah.
We wondered when Cyno was going to find that opening, and you look at this replay, and earlier on in that replay when he was able to grab himself the double kill, this Bakasura is at the point in this game where he's going to hurt you just fine.
Oh yeah, and that's the biggest thing. Again, look at his build. No boots, no anything like, well, specifically movement speed related immediately on the table, right? Bakasura is going to just, I'm going to slam down. There's 7% there, 10% there. 17, honestly not that bad actually, across 2 items, to be able to keep him into this versus, I believe, the 18% you get from boots normally. So he's running around the same pace that you're going to see out of others.
He has the extra 10% as well from the Heeed, so I think he has 27% even on top of that. So even more so than what he'd be building on boots anyway. Yeah, coasting that's potentially even an under. He's speeding around. He's zooming, dude. You give the speed buff to Cyno, and he's gonna be tough to lock down.
But it's all that and the attack speed. Like, that's the thing. So Hasten, the biggest thing about Hasten Katana is if you miss one, typically that's enough to reset you, right? Not in the case when you have all of this attack speed built up like Cyno does, to the point where if you miss one, within the second that you're, waiting for that movement speed buff to come back, you're going to be able to swing again. He's just constantly sticking to people. And again, that's just the glory of this build. The kind of anomaly that Bakasura makes it work. And so far, it's been going well for him. 3, 3, and 4, so it's not something stellar. You don't write home about it just yet. But it's been looking good, and now I believe, especially with that Erendite pickup, it's going to be something different in these last few fights.
We're nervous about late-game Bakasura. I think we also need to be nervous about late-game Freya. Nesfor has a couple of the rings. The band crossed town online and is moving in to a 3rd ring here. In these fights, I mean, it just takes one of those two to go unchecked to make a really big difference here. RelentlessOne uses the Colossal Fury. He's going to move the rest of his team. Locked and goaded now. That is on Fire Giant. It is absolutely melting away. Wow. In goes Heeed, but not able to steal it away. He locks in a few with his cage, though. SpreeeN, they're all coming down. Bayroneri has used his ultimate as well to rejoin this fight. Riven's review from Shia. He's going to separate things out just a little bit further. Ẓtuart, the hunter, down from locked and goaded in this fight. But Cyno, you got plenty of power to turn it around onto SpreeeN. 1-for-1 trade. Whirlwind of Rage and Steel. He's going to toss Shia to the side. 3-man stun, though. Not able to capitalize. As one more falls, it's a 2-for-2 fight. This one is split, Gormizer, and these have gone on very long engagements in these last couple of fights. And this one still rages on with Nesfor maybe finding himself a kill.
And honestly, the more kills they get, the better it is for Elevate. Not just on paper, but because of that Fire Giant coming through. Cyno finally rotates back in. That's a double kill, and this isn't a safe spot to be.
Yeah, talk about the patience. He waits just long enough to rejoin the fight. He gets himself a double kill. It might look for one more onto Heeed, but Heeed jumps himself out. And that's the difference this Bakasura makes. Now at 6, 3, and 5, picks up the Erendite as well. That is plenty of damage for him. And I think the patience is kind of the virtue there. You're wondering maybe where Cyno is in this engagement. Nesfor just kind of swinging away on some of the frontliners for locked and goaded. And now you can see him in the replay just lurking there up above. Yeah. And all it takes is one moment from the turn around this fight.
And Butcher Blades, it's something different. In terms of an ability, it's just something different. If you can stick to someone with it, again, how I kind of described Freya as if pulse is up, you're good. Butcher Blades gives you true damage with all of this attack speed, plus the physical power that you're getting. It's passive at this point, fully leveled up, plus all the items and attack speed that he has on stacked on top. I mean, you're looking at a 2, 3, maybe 4 hit, depending on who he's standing on, that's going to come through. A lot of this is oriented toward burning down tanks as well. Stone Cutting Sword comes to my mind. So Shia and Heeed are easy targets for Cyno. There's no one on Elevate that is really safe from him right now. And I think that makes this Bakasura ever more frightening to go up against. And honestly, he might be someone they need to lock down first next time instead of letting him slip through their clutches like they did before.
a lot of the clean setup we saw from Elevate earlier in the game has been a bit harder to come by here. Heeed has been doing some of the early stuns. And, you know, at 5-1 and 7, this Odin certainly has been worth his priority and picks his bans. But the kind of shift from SpreeeN, who's kind of trying to do, it seems like he's trying to do some of the similar, like, delay, join the fight in, find some final shots, Cyno, but not quite the same effectiveness there. Bayroneri forced to use both of his actives, deleted by Pegon, who gets himself the first kill of the game. RelentlessOne has found an engagement on a couple members of Elevate under this left side. Phoenix, 4 members now collapse on a Nesfor, who takes to the skies, just gonna plug away some damage. Down he drops, and Pegon throws out the ultimate as well. Cyno, he is identified here in this fight. Heeed is gonna look for the kill, and he sure does find it, but RelentlessOne is gonna dive onto this Thor, gets stunned out by Heeed. So Heeed, this Odin, making a big difference here in this fight. RelentlessOne goes underneath the Titan. Nesfor gets the kill, and it's a 2-for-1 in favor of Elevate.
But they get that Phoenix, which honestly might make the biggest difference. If Quig gets caught out and is held out here, or if Heeed is able to get deep enough to try and pick someone else off, it will definitely flip everything fully in favor of Elevate. But when you're looking at almost 10,000 gold in terms of a lead, the Phoenix down on the left-hand side, which is going to start those fire minions you see at the top left of the minimap, it makes it a lot more difficult to justify, yeah, you got 2 kills, and admittedly, Cyno's a huge target, but is it going to realistically change things? You need this Pegon kill.
Pegon burns both of his actives, just needed the fadeaway shot from Bayroneri, who's unable to find it. Apple just gonna plug away just a little bit of damage. That's an important follow-up right there. If Elevate were able to grab another kill, you're looking at, you know, minute-plus death timers, especially with Fire Giant spawning in about a minute. But Gore, these fights in the early game were so clean, consistent, really from Elevate. These have been long and drawn out a little. I mean, I don't want to call them sloppy necessarily, but disjointed. Lots of fighting on multiple different fronts, seemingly, in all these engagements.
No, I mean, honestly, from top to bottom, it's felt like both teams have had that issue. I mean, there have been some times where it's like, this was beautiful, this was coordinated, everyone seemed to kind of sync together, the cogs all lined up. And then sometimes it's, I don't know, we just got to kill that guy, and I guess let's commit, see what we can do. I mean, there were even a couple of ults there from Locked and Goated that felt like they just kind of fell all over the place. Quig had a target, tossed Nesfor back, but there were 3 people, and well, maybe only 2 people looking towards Nesfor, and 2 people on the other side of him fighting elsewhere on the map, right? It's just moments like that of decide who your target is, go in on it. If you're going for a zone, that's great, but it just felt like they couldn't decide Phoenix or fight, Phoenix or fight. Ultimately, they end up getting the Phoenix, kind of getting the fight, but not enough that it would signify a definitive win.
Watch out, Heeed. Yeah, you can stun up Cyno. Uses his beat to re-engage on the fight. River's Rebuke stuns out. A couple is free, and he comes flying down. Thor, he's re-engaged this fight. Locked and Goated. They're getting chipped away here by Elevate. A perfect engagement. Nesfor, he's left unchecked here. RelentlessOne, they leave SpreeeN kind of in the back line on his own, but the rest of Locked and Goated, they're getting melted away. A double kill for Nesfor, a 3-for-1 for Elevate, and they're looking towards this Phoenix.
Okay, so the timer was a little off, but remember how we were talking about Nesfor at the very beginning, and I said, yeah, in about 15 plus minutes, we'll start talking about him again? There's a lot done by SpreeeN there to set that up, and eventually he gets chased out. It is Nesfor's damage that opens up that door, though. I mean, there are just so many shots from that Freya that are not only finding their home, but kind of making everyone on Locked and Goated rethink the engagement. Even now, it's something that it might not be burning through Quig immediately, but it's enough to make them rethink how much they want to try and defend this. Not enough to stop them and get that Phoenix just yet, but it's definitely opening up the call for the Fire Giant. Maybe the Oni Fury if they can't quite seal the deal on that one.
Sure, a 3-man stun from SpreeeN kind of creaks the door open, and then an unchecked Freya in the late game really slams it open for Elevate in the rest of that fight. Pegon, the only one left dead in this game. Oni Fury is up, as you point out, Fire Giant is as well. It was a good time to take a fight, though. I was just about to point out they were kind of doing that Fire Giant dance, and there were those fire minions kind of pouring through that left lane for Elevate. So it's a good time to take that fight. He just teleported into the FG pit. It was maybe looked at just for a second. But Gore, you look at 60-second death timers. This is the point where you lose a fight convincingly. That could just be game.
Yeah, you don't want to lose more than 3 people at any given time. Usually after 20 minutes, that's a death sentence. But honestly, once you hit 33, enhanced Fire Giant online, which is going to help destroy those Phoenixes even faster, makes a difference.
RelentlessOne, he ults, but that's going to time out here shortly. SpreeeN up into the air. Anvil of Dawn crashes down onto Cyno. You're not going to let him participate in this fight. Healing as well, as you point out from Shiaaaaa. Keeps the sustain high enough for Heeed to stay alive in this fight. So that Bakasura that has had massive impact in a lot of these jungle fights has been identified and killed off early and often here for Elevate. We're not going to pivot and start the spiral.
They don't necessarily have anything to screaming secure to me versus Pegon, whose damage should be able to do it, but Bayroneri maybe takes a step too far.
Yeah, Pegon identifies him, deletes him. SpreeeN far in the back line has to use the 1-2 from the hammer to get away from RelentlessOne, so a good pick there onto the mid laner of Elevate. Locked and Goaded have given themselves an advantage. Heeed wants a little bit more though. Ẓtuart has to use the up-down just to peel for himself. Looks like he's just going to play spoiler on a potential FG attempt. So that's a big loss, Gore. I mean, you had Cyno down and you had a 5v4 advantage. Suddenly Bayroneri now is missing. Nesfor should be able to solo this Oni Fury, so a small win despite losing your mission.
They need someone, I think, here for Elevate to push up just one more wave over on that left-hand side. Push it back one more time. It looks like SpreeeN is going to go over there. They're keeping that Phoenix alive right now, which is probably one of the biggest things. They get the Oni Fury, which is going to give them pressure in all of the lanes. And that should help equalize the Fire Giant fight, especially since Locked and Goaded had to back during that Oni Fury. There was no time for them to set up and really set a big winning fight available for them, or a kind of ambush onto someone like Shiaaaaa or Heeed. So it's still anyone's game with the Sentry Wards coming down right now. 3 in Elevate's pockets that can potentially come out and counter some of these. I expect to see a lot of this dance, maybe for another 2 minutes before someone can truly lock down the Fire Giant.
And I kind of look at RelentlessOne as well. He's been using the Colossal Fury early and often in a lot of these fights. The Curse to Ankh picked up by Shiaaaaa there to mitigate some of that healing that he's going to look to do. Interestingly enough, though, I feel like we see the Thorns active picked up a decent bit by Vamana players, but opting for Blink this time. He wants a clear path into the backline, it seems.
I mean, hey, if your jump isn't going to be enough to get you there, or you need something to get you back out, Blink is your best way to get in. Fortunately, though, he's going to be seen. Actually collapsed on Cyno, isolated.
Yeah, SpreeeN dunks down. Bayroneri finishes off that kill. Cyno one more time. The member lost from Locked and Goaded, but that means 2 members for Elevate in the left-hand lane. Nesfor, he's sprinting away from this Vamana as fast as he can, and RelentlessOne decides to turn his attention elsewhere. Quig a little bit low here, and Bayroneri has found some free shots. Drops down some of those health bars. Good damage in. Ẓtuart turns around the kill. Onto that Chernabog, though, and that's another loss. Mid laner for jungler. Traded out one more time, but Nesfor, watch out. This Freya, she's swinging hard underneath the Fire Giant. Bayroneri, or Pegon, rather. He's looking nervous. A double kill for the Freya, and an FG started for Elevate.
And they have just enough people around to be able to not only melt this one in their favor, but I mean, RelentlessOne is pushing up mid. Quig is over there defending the Phoenix. No one on Locked and Goaded is defending this one. So that opens up these last 2 tier 2s. It opens up the Phoenixes to be question marks here around the base. Pyromancer is kind of icing on the cake. They should be able to back. And I mean, this late in the game, this is where you start to see boots get sold and bought up, and you know, with a 6th full item to give you that final power spike. And I'm going to tell you, I'm afraid of this Freya normally, let alone if she can come through and potentially have another item giving those autos even more meat to them.
Yeah, 8-4 and 8 now for Nesfor. It's something to look at. A lot of this has stemmed from killing Cyno first. You know, the last 3 attempts sort of around this Fire Giant. More recently, he was in the long lane and got killed by a couple members of Elevate. But where Cyno has been having a massive impact on a lot of these fights, it's been mitigated just because he's been dead so often. So well played by Elevate to find him, kill him, and then rejoin the fight. Bayroneri using his ultimate well, I think, as well. That's maybe the biggest threat for Locked and Goaded right now.
It's what's allowing them to rotate. Like that kill onto Cyno in the left lane earlier. It was 2 members over there. Bayroneri just says, okay, cool, now I can ult and go back to the Fire Giant fight to make sure everything is equal. It also has to come down to the fact that, like you said, not only are they focusing Cyno, they're focusing Cyno hard. He was 6-3 and 5 earlier, now he's 6-7 and 6. He's gotten 1 assist and 4 deaths since he was able to find that big turnaround over near like the tier 1 on Locked and Goaded side in the solo lane. Nothing has happened since then for him, nothing big at least, that he's been able to kind of change the pace of the game. You're still looking at him as being a huge threat. That's why they're targeting him so much. But unless he does something huge and does it soon, this base is about to be broken open by Elevate.
So they know where SpreeeN is. Doug highlights the ward. But they also know where Cyno is. It's no surprise that there's a Bakasura hanging out right over this right-hand wall. Plenty of CC, I think, for Elevate to kind of heal for themselves, and you're seeing a little bit of that now. RelentlessOne has found himself Bayroneri in the back line with some good stuns and peeled off for the rest of the team.
Oh.
Down comes SpreeeN, double kill for the Thor. Pegon, he's gotten Bayroneri out of this fight, but Nesfor, he's free and clear suddenly just to swing away. Gormizer, this is suddenly looking like a game-winning fight as 4 members are down from Locked and Goated. 4 members strong from Elevate, and this left side Phoenix is gonna fall.
I mean, I'm gonna have to check. 5 members down. Freya's still alive and full health at that. And Enhanced Fire Giant. Yeah, that's I don't know. That's a pretty big swing in your favor. That's good for Elevate.
Elevate, they're going to take game number 1, convincing fashion, towards the end at least. A little bit muddy there towards the middle. Elevate take game number 1 over Locked and Goated. And we figured this would be a powerful composition for them, right? In picks and pans, we were thinking Elevate has a wonderful comp here. And again, the mid lane, you know, things kind of pulled back and forth, but ultimately well played from Elevate.
It's weird because a lot of it is, hey, can you keep this Freya online? The best thing that Locked and Goated could have done was try to end that game pre-20 minutes. Right. Very difficult to do. Pre-30 minutes, honestly, is where you'll see, like, well, at 30 minutes is where you see a lot of these games typically ending. But Nesfor, he hit that mark, and that's all he needed. It was really, like, that Bancroft's Talon, once he was able to finish it, that came online, and he started being huge in these fights. Then with all of the rings, as well as the Typhon's Fang at the end, it solidified it. But honestly, that's just damage-wise. I have to look at ults, and I have to look at SpreeeN specifically. The stuns that he was able to have throughout pretty much every single one of the last, like, 5 team fights were huge in keeping the team alive here. And honestly, I think if you don't have that Thor there, if you have any other assassin, I don't think you get the win.
I agree. And when so much of the conversation is around how can Thor impact that early game once he gets his ultimate, it's because, you know, you can't count on massive 2-3 man stuns every time you engage, unless you're SpreeeN seemingly in this game, who's found a way to stun 2-3 members of Locked and Goated every single time he went in. That's just game number 1, Gore. I think this is going to be a very exciting set to follow all the way through. But Elevate, they are the ones who take it. We're going to jump to a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have game number 2. Well, game number 1 was so exciting, Gore. Why not just jump into picks and bans for game number 2? And I almost wonder, do you have to ban a Freya here if you're Locked and Goated, or any of the other magical ADCs? And why maybe don't we see them more often? Because that was a masterclass, I think, by Nesfor.
I think it's that risk versus reward that comes down from it. I think Freya is maybe the easiest because it is very much just, hey, I'm online, and she's safe enough, especially like Valkyrie's discretion gets you out of the fight pretty cleanly. You have a good banish that can keep you afloat. She's worth a ban, and honestly, after the way that she just played, I think you have to have it in your mind. They might not go for it just yet, and it's that huge question mark of, is that the reason we lost? I actually think, again, going back to what I said at the end, it was probably the Thor. I have to figure out where exactly some of that pressure was coming from, try to isolate it or pick around it this time.
I think that's entirely fair. It's capitalizing on a good situation that Nesfor was able to do, but a lot of it was that Thor that was setting up the fights, and I think she is well with some good Yamoja ultimates in that game. Yamoja unfortunately banned out this time around. Ebo, he stays in the ban column, so does Hoonbot, so some jungle emphasis still from Locked and Goated here. Khan takes a backseat alongside Camazotz.
I think banning the Odin, grabbing yourself the Xing Chen. So one thing that worked really well for you, and then one thing that worked really well against you to be off the board. It does open up like that conversation. You know, we've been looking at Vamana. We had talked about him at the beginning of the last match as like this flavor of the month as of right now, and well, hey, he's been doing well, even though they weren't able to get the big win during that last game. RelentlessOne showcased what he could do, which is sit in the back line, zone someone out of the fight, potentially kill them with the right build. Didn't come to fruition just because of the carries that Elevate had, but the potential is always there.
I'll take it, man. I mean, it certainly, you look at that game and everything that went right for Elevate. It didn't seem like RelentlessOne was the issue. He just got so mitigated by enough heal, I think, from Elevate. But Elevate are going to be the ones playing it this time, so we'll see how that pivots. Xbalanque picked up here as the hunter. He, I think, as a god, has started to get picked a lot more often. In that long lane, set him up well, and he does plenty, I think, to warrant a pick here.
And And one of my favorite things, so, you know, we talk about this whenever we cast Paladins too, but turning off the lights on the enemy team for 6 seconds, it's pretty good, just alone. Although, I will say having the added range, which is something a lot of these players will use, someone blinks away, they have a dash that gets you out of there, and then all of a sudden you're able to hit just a little further than they're used to. It's really good for cleanup. And also, it hasn't been done in a while, but one of my favorite things is seeing teams attack the towers from outside tower range by using his ult. Yeah. It's just moments like that that you see what Xbalanque can really do.
And I love them going back to this Thor here. I mean, we don't have to dive back onto that soapbox of the impact that Thor had for them in game number 1. They'll look for, it's a hard, I think, performance to repeat here in game 2, but I think even a fraction less of what he was able to bring in game number 1, I think Elevate will certainly be happy with here for them. Bring up the Xbalanque. Hachiman has been another popular pick to go up against him. Chang'e may be locked in here for Locked and Goated. And honestly, that's been an interesting. I think we've seen her sprinkled in here and there. It's been the solo lane sometimes, but you know, enough healing, some CC as well, and a lot of teams actually have made it work.
Yeah, and when it comes down to it, like normally when I think of Chang'e, she comes up in a very direct like anti-support meta, mainly because of her, along with like Bacchus, along with Sobek, who oddly enough is locked in there as well, have anti-heal built into their kit, so it's something that they can stack onto really well. But like you said, the CC, it's mainly her ult when it comes down and strikes through. You hit 3 or 4 people with that. The last 2 are feeling that stun forever. It is such a pain when you get hit by it. So she has her potency, but I haven't seen her lately. I'm interested to see what she can do.
Well, Gore, Elevate have maybe a more traditional composition.
Yeah.
But Locked and Goated have thrown some interesting gods into the mix here. I brought up Țtuart, the Hachiman, going up against Nesfor, kind of completely foregoing the fact that Pegon is going to be on the Heeed this time. They've gone for double Hunter Locked and Goated have this time. And Cabrakan up and down.
I mean, Cabrakan, again, Cyno right now is not playing things that are typical, but he's playing things that have worked in the past. And I guess, honestly, that's enough to get things rolling for you. He can do a lot of damage. He's got, again, some good CC setup for his team. Locked and Goated, it just feels like they're taking, I would argue, 3 risks in certain ways. Having the double Hunter means that physical protection is really good against you. Having Cyno playing the Cabrakan, something that doesn't come through too often, seems like a little risk. And then sending the Chang'e. Again, I love her. I love playing Chang'e. I think she is fantastic. But we haven't seen her have a lot of success at the top level. Well, this season, we haven't really seen her peak this season. Maybe this is the chance for Locked and Goated to kind of show us what we've been missing out on.
Well, obviously, she and you know, she does magical damage, but are you at all concerned about that maybe not being enough here for Locked and Goated? I mean, depending on how Cyno builds, you know, maybe as well, there's some magical damage there. But the 2 heavy hitters are normally the mid lane and the Hunter, right? And you have both of them there if you're Locked and Goated. Could an overemphasis of physical defense maybe just give Elevate a too big of an advantage?
It actually depends. I think having the double Hunter opens up the interesting avenue and conversation for, does one build crit, the other build pin? Like, you can use both Hunter builds and potentially make it work out. It's like, hey, you know, Pegon, maybe you don't go crit, maybe you only go pin, and we just have you shred the tanks whenever we need it. Țtuart goes crit, and he goes for the one-on-ones with Nesfor and Bayroneri. Things like that open up the conversation to be very dominant in favor of Locked and Goated, because they just have too many targets to isolate at that point. You don't know who you need to jump on to try and win the fight if you're Elevate.
Well, we'll have to see which way those builds go, but that's a great point to bring up. This could be the conversation piece we have between Pegon and Țtuart if they opt for different directions on that build. Which one is maybe better, depending on the context of the game, of course. I did notice just a moment ago, though, we talked about the Chang'e right coming into this game.
Yeah.
I expect, you know, Heeed to be pretty poked out throughout this laning phase. I mean, that's really what Chang'e does best, right, in solo. I mean, she pokes a good bit of damage in that arc. It's going to be a tough one for Heeed to stay really healthy and really out in the middle of that lane, and opens up the door for a blue buff invade here for Locked and Goated.
And honestly, this is the best way to get your Chang'e ahead over here. If you can get that blue buff, she has the bunny to go back to the store, and she can potentially just sustain herself if she has the mana to. So I like this little dance they're doing. They either get a kill on SpreeeN or maybe Heeed. And if not, they get a blue buff and you're happy.
Well, blue buff is taken down, and RelentlessOne will pick it up, and The Elevate blue buff is, or the Locked and Goaded blue buff rather, is spawned on their side of the map. So blue buffs for everyone, unless you're a member of Elevate here. So, you know, maybe a small advantage that turns into a big swing, especially when you look at Heeed, who opted to go into that blink first. So now that you have to go back this early, he's not going to be able to get back into lane as quickly.
He's had to go back early, doesn't have the teleport like you said. But then you look, in my eyes, the way this lane's going to go for him, it's out of his control at this point, right? Like, he's playing Vamana the same way that we've seen Vamana played. It's the Chang'e, RelentlessOne right now. Both blue buffs, a meditation, decided to not go for the teleport. But it's because if you can stay alive, you have meditation to keep your mana up, as well as the blue buff, plus some healing in your kit and on the med. The bunny goes back and buys for you. You never have to leave lane if you do things right here. So poking out Heeed is just going to make it so difficult for him to stay in this lane. And, I mean, look at stuns like that. You're just setting yourself up for success here.
Yeah, I'll freely use that because, you know, when I have the blue buff and you know, enough mana and sustain to bring it back up, use the active there to give himself
God, I love
enough mana. Yeah, man, you're loving this, aren't you? You're loving Chang'e here in the solo lane.
It's just, it's her home. It feels natural. Like, she doesn't come through. Warriors dominate over here a lot. So sometimes you get to see a support, or a healer, I should say, kind of transition over there. We've seen Guardians over there sometimes, but like, Hell solo has been something that's happened in the past, although she definitely feels like maybe she fits more mid lately. Chang'e just is kind of at peace over there because of the nature of solo lane. She can build up something like a breastplate against a warrior, which is going to give her more cooldown, set herself up for more heals late game, and give her those physical protections and the mana she needs to sustain in lane. Like, it just builds on itself, and played properly, it's one of my favorite things to watch.
Port rotation beginning here, and it was towards that blue buff one more time. Lights go out. That's Nesfor from Elevate looking to engage on this fight. SpreeeN has taken to the skies. Anvil of Dawn looking for a target here. Blink back out from Cyno. No stun there for SpreeeN this time. Suddenly, Heeed has found maybe a good fight for himself. RelentlessOne doesn't have his ultimate yet. He used it to trade just a moment ago. Low health bars for Elevate here. She is going to get out alive. He drops down from his ultimate, disengaged from Locked and Goaded, realizing that this might not be the fight that they want. And somehow, Goremizer, no kill to be had in a very close engagement.
Again, so I almost hate that I keep going back to Chang'e, but I feel like I have to
it's
at
fair,
this point.
right?
The fact that her 2 can function as an Aegis, or a Beads, depending on when you need to use it, but in this case, an Aegis to kind of help make sure you stay out of the stun and out of the damage from SpreeeN. If SpreeeN hits an ult there, you see a first blood coming down. But the fact that no one was stunned out by that makes it a lot easier for Locked and Goaded to fall back. RelentlessOne has the sustain to keep everyone going. And honestly, if you stay too long, especially against something like a Cabrakan, that starts to melt you. I mean, he does a lot of damage even though he's classified as a Guardian. There's a reason we see him go into the jungle when he is played. And it's because his 1-2 punch is stronger than most of the junglers that you'll typically see. Or actually, I would maybe argue more on par with what you'll see. As like a Thor double tap will come through. Similar kind of punching style from Cyno if you get him.
Sure, talk to me a little bit about maybe what you expect from Cyno in some of these fights. I mean, we know what we expect from SpreeeN on that Thor. We saw it all last game. What is this Cabrakan in the hands of Cyno maybe excel at doing to, you know, put Elevate at a disadvantage?
So the biggest thing would be the movement speed that he gets whenever he activates his 1. The fact that it can follow up with A, a ton of damage, and B, a stun as well, means he can chase you down no problem. The blink with the walls on his ult, it's just setting him up for targeting 1 to 2 people, either zoning them out or killing them out. Then worst case scenario, he can deal with the trimmers.
Or he might help find first blood here. RelentlessOne knocked up, but he's going to try to get himself out of this fight. Just a little bit more damage, and Heeed might have it. Bayroneri returns the kill onto RelentlessOne. It's a 1-for-1 trade so far. Pegon is going to use the up-down to move back into this fight. 3 members against 3 members here with Hachiman and Nesfor off on the opposite side of this map. Locked and Goaded playing aggressor here. Might turn towards this blue buff that could give Elevate an opportunity to re-engage. Looks like for the moment, maybe that's where things stand, as Pegon is able to disengage himself. It's a 1-for-1 with the mid laners getting the kills.
And I think, honestly, it keeps Bayroneri just a little ahead. You can see level 9 to level 8. He's been dominating so far, but honestly, I kind of expect that in the Mage versus the Hunter right now. There hasn't been a lot going for Pegon. in general. Like the last game, he was able to do top damage. He was able to apply a ton, but the Discordia was not necessarily the one popping off. His damage just led to other kills. Now you get the stuns in the jungle. This could make a difference.
Well, and Heeed is starting to kill elsewhere on the map. Ẓtuart is going to assist Pegon on that kill, and Shiaaaaa falls. So two members, suddenly with the snap of a finger, two members for Elevate are back in base. Heeed drops to the hands of Quig, and of course Pegon assisting Ẓtuart. So now both hunters for Locked and Goated have found themselves a kill early on here. And maybe it's a small shift, but that gold lead now at about 1,500, and Locked and Goated have carved themselves a nice little early game.
It's going to be where I think Locked and Goated transition into late game that matters most, right? RelentlessOne, I can talk up and down about how Chang'e is great in the solo lane. You're only in the lane for so long, and we kind of saw where Chang'e fell weak in one of those, the last 2 fights ago, is how I'll describe it. He goes down, he was, the return kill for Elevate, but their strengths are where Pegon and Ẓtuart pick up, and also Cyno. Now that he's got Spear of Desolation online, a little bit of pin to help with these picks, I also anticipate potentially seeing something like a Polynomicon, something to give him a little more bang for his buck after activating his one and getting a hard punch later on, depending on where he wants to go with his build. There's so much open for late game damage that's going to start transitioning more or less in about 5 minutes, 15 to the 16, 17 minute mark, where they get those 4th items online, they finish them off, and then the fights will really start to shake out, and that will be how well they handle the curve for Locked and Goated, how well they accept the curve for Elevate, that I think determines the rest of the game from there.
And I like that you bring up the Spear of Desolation, because obviously early in this game I sort of brought up if you were concerned at all about too much physical power, maybe not enough magical. Cyno is going to try to maybe mitigate a couple of those worries there, depending on the route that he chooses to go in his build. But just a little bit of, magical power with some pen as well will at least help some in that regard. But there could be a fight brewing here in the middle lane. SpreeeN is taken to the skies, drops down, finds a double kill here. RelentlessOne deleted. That's a big whirlwind of rage and steel. 4 members of Elevate comes back. Oh, but that one goes searching for any sort of follow-up, as Locked and Goated was just not in range. Elevate, they get away with one there. Snag themselves a kill onto the Chang'e. Get out of their lives.
I mean, they're still looking for something, trying to chase it down. Shiaaaaa just barely alive, and that wall from SpreeeN should be enough to deter the aggression. Quig is, still pushing forward, but, no ult available means he more than likely can't do too much in that kind of scenario. And again, as much as I wanted to talk up Chang'e earlier, her 2 is great, but only when you can activate it. That CC chain from Elevate was so well timed to keep RelentlessOne locked down that there wasn't anything he could get off. Early on, it was just a couple of, actually on cooldown, he had to use it a little too early there. And so that pluck from Sobek was perfect for him.
And another double stun from SpreeeN. You have to include the 4-man whirlwind of rage and steel at the end of the replay, right? It's just a bummer that nobody from Locked and Goated was really in range to capitalize on that one. But if nothing else, that shows you the potential of Quig, especially when he's piloting the Xing. You're out of position even just for a moment, despite that fight going so well for Elevate. There's some follow-up there from Locked and Goated. You're potentially looking at a much different fight.
Yeah, and honestly, I think Locked and Goated, without the Chang'e, I'm going to tell you, a 4-man ult there into a Chang'e ult, so Quig into RelentlessOne, that absolutely guarantees 4 kills. I can't think of a way where it doesn't, but they just weren't quite in position. It kind of felt like Pegon and Ẓtuart, no one was really committed. Ẓtuart was still over in the left lane. Maybe if you have a rotation from the hunter, you could start to pick things up. But it shows the potential and the potency that Quig has, as you had kind of highlighted. And I don't expect it to be the only 4-man ult. It's very difficult to pull off 4-man ult, so it feels weird to maybe lay my line out on that, but 2 to 3 people almost every time, I kind of expect a lot out of him.
Well, he's got a lot to kind of counter out, where SpreeeN seemingly every time that Anvil of Dawn drops down from SpreeeN somehow finds 2+ members of Locked and Goated, at least here in this set, so they're going to have to return some of the CC, return to sender, if you will. It is the Gold Fury that's now being pivoted around, and this first one, very important, Gore, especially when the gold lead is as minimal as it is right now. If you look at these 2 teams kind of dancing around the Fury, that's a big swing here in this early game.
I mean, you grab a Gold Fury right now, especially if you're locked in goated, you're up 2,000. A very silent 2,000. It's more around 1,500, but kind of just a sneaky 2,000. If RelentlessOne goes down, it might actually become 2,000 as it sets up potentially the call for it. If you can grab it as locked in goated, then it is an easy setup for you to continue controlling this game.
Well, luckily Elevate have the oracles around that Gold Fury, so they were able to sense out the effort. Elevate had sent 2 members to try to jump onto RelentlessOne, which opened the door maybe for locked in goated to try the Gold Fury, but they thought otherwise once Elevate were able to move themselves into this one. What have you made so far? I mean, it's been a very quiet game, you know, 3 kills, 2 kills, 13 and some change minutes into this game. You know, has anything stood out to you about this kind of double hunter composition? We've seen just a few fights, you know, 1-0-1 for Pegon, 1-0-0 for Ẓtuart. You haven't gotten the greatest pool of data to kind of look at. But from what you've seen, I think laning well against, you know, Merlin, at least there's something to hold on to.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a level up here if you're Pegon. You've got a level up there if you're Ẓtuart as well, both at level 14 now. And I feel like what we're going to see, again, is the transition they have. Not a lot of, well, gods that scream early game to me on Locked and Goated. Not necessarily anything that makes it so Elevate should control the first 10 minutes, 12 minutes, but nothing that makes me think Locked and Goated can absolutely decimate the opposition, right? Like, they're looking at these last, well, not last, these next 3 to 5 minutes as being their big power spikes. I think that's where we're going to see these rotations come online.
RelentlessOne wanted those mid-harpies, but he's now maybe set up Elevate. They tried to collapse on him. Shiaaaaa deleted from the game. Ẓtuart finds his second. The Hachiman starting to come online just a little bit. Nesfor has found himself a couple low-health members of Locked and Goated. Turns off the lights, but no follow-up there. Goated have a 5v4 numbers advantage here. They're going to start up the Gold Fury. SpreeeN is close by. Might be thinking about a steal, but doesn't go for it. Locked and Goated on the back of 1 kill. Lock down the GF.
Hey, Gold Fury, what if we just take it? And so they do. And as they are, again, that lead goes up to almost 3,000 with some good farm, maybe a tier 1 sprinkled on top there. They could easily eclipse that 3,000 mark. And again, 1,000 to, I would even argue, up to 1,500 is in that area of like, okay, cool, but is it going to be enough for you? Like, is that it's not a big enough lead that you are in control of the game. 3,000, you are in control. It's what you do with that control that will then translate to a victory or a defeat here. And it's kills like this, or maybe rotations like this for Cyno that could help set them up. But it's also kind of showcasing where, you know, we've seen Cabrakan as kind of the assist king right now at 0-3. He needs something big here. He needs a net.
Yeah, this is dangerous. Cyno trying to get out alive, drops down his walls, maybe just traps him in. SpreeeN and Dawn is going to secure the kill onto the enemy jungler. So Elevate pull 1 kill back for themselves, and you can tell the reinforcements were there as 4 members of Elevate kind of hanging around this Gold Fury pit now, or Fire Giant pit rather. Maybe positioning themselves close by this Pyromancer, but I think they'll think twice, take the kill, and go back.
I mean, honestly, I'd take it. That kill was served up on a silver platter. It was perfectly for you. You might have had to invest a little more than you wanted to get it, but considering RelentlessOne threw out his ult, Cyno threw out his ult, a 2-for-2 ult trade, plus you get the kill if you're Elevate, is perfectly fine in my eyes to help keep you alive. Plus that tier 1 that Heeed was able to pick up just prior to the engagement. It's just small victories right now, I think, that are helping Elevate claw, not even claw their way back into it, but like hold on to with an iron grip where they are. They just need the big objectives to go their way as well. They need a Pyromancer or a Fire Giant to help swing things more heavily in their favor, although based on last game, we saw how easily it can give and take away from your team, depending on how things go.
And Cyno had to use his beads there in that fight and wasn't even able to get alive, so for the next 90 seconds or so, that Cabrakan, who's going to want to be front and center in a lot of these fights, isn't going to have that CC cleanse that he might hope to have. So another small win there for Elevate. Heeed back in lane though, 3 members from Locked and Goated collapsing onto the Vamana here. Reinforcements hanging close by in the jungle from Elevate. It's SpreeeN down, Heeed dunks onto RelentlessOne, the Chang'e, the target of attention in this engagement for Elevate. 4 members now pouring through the right side jungle. Bayroneri, he's here to help as well. Good stun from RelentlessOne is going to peel a little bit of this fight out for himself. Chang'e though, first for the ball. Heeed finds the kill. SpreeeN is gonna use his hammer to get himself out alive. Elevate have taken so much damage here, but they're not scared to re-engage on this fight. Heeed, final shot, that's 2 in this one for the Vamana, and a 2 for none for Elevate. Do lose to their mid-tier 1 tower, but another good fight from the red side.
I mean, nothing that screams success again for Locked and Goated. You get that tier 1 in mid, but again, like you said, trade it out for the one on left. And you just kind of lose kills from top to bottom. I need something more out of this bracket more than anything. I think Chang'e's getting isolated, and in a lot of these scenarios, it's leading to a lot of control for Elevate. But Cyno has been isolated just as much and hasn't been able to find a lot of damage in return. During that last engagement, it was Heed's Thorns that really kind of protected him, so maybe Cyno has a window right now while those are down for the next 75 seconds. But not necessarily a big swing in terms of team fight. Now, when you look at where the gold has come from, especially with the fact that Nesfor just got that tier 2, if I'm Locked and Goated, I'm even more upset because the huge lead that we had earlier, well, huge in quotes there, has all but disappeared now.
Yeah, look at that downswing. Everything for Elevate here. I mean, Locked and Goated caught it even on the gold differential, 300 and some change. XP though, that's pushing 1 and plus or minus 1,000 there for Elevate. So the lead has disappeared. We figured that Gold Fury would be a big turning point in this game, and it was for a brief moment. But some good fighting around that short lane for Elevate have really pulled themselves back into this one. And that's what we saw really in game number 1, right? Where Cyno and a lot of the mid-game fights had a massive impact on that Bakasura. But once they started to identify the jungler for Locked and Goated, none of the remaining fights in that game seemed to go their way. So I think Elevate, kind of a similar mindset here. Let's try to catch out Cyno and we'll win the fights.
Just do whatever you can. If you kill Cyno, it does kind of lead to that, well, result of, hey, we win. And I think that might be the case of anybody that has world champion next to their name at any given point. If you kill them, it should at least theoretically help swing the fight in your favor. Especially because so far we haven't seen too much from Pegon and Ẓtuart. And that's where my eyes are going to fall. If Cyno's not going to be able to get it done, you need one of your hunters to be the player to come through and swing this fight and this game back in your favor. That was gorgeous.
Whoa, nice multi-bounce there from Pegon. Just plugs away a little bit of damage and finds the stun. It's a separated fight though, as she has found a few members. Down comes crashing SpreeeN in the back line. Ẓtuart has to use the ultimate to disengage here, and SpreeeN has found the first kill. Who would you guess it on? Cyno, he's back in base. One more time, Quig being brought down as well, likely for the first step of this game. Oh, a nice knock-up. Oh, the Fury finishes it off. This is a sweeping team fight, or so I thought for Elevate. Suddenly 2 kills turned around. The Hunter still alive for Locked and Goated, and they're making a big difference.
I mean, it's 2 for 2, I should say. But honestly, Cyno hasn't been anywhere near as worth as SpreeeN in my eyes in terms of what he's been able to provide to the game. And then you get rid of Nesfor for Quig across the board. Absolutely worthwhile to make that trade. Drop your support anytime if it means that you can get that hunter off the board. And while it didn't open up that Fury just yet, Primal's still standing. They can go around, start pushing some of these waves, keep themselves in the conversation, especially with the sustain from RelentlessOne. They might even pick another fight here if you're Elevated.
Yeah, they are kind of low, though. You have to be careful. RelentlessOne aggroed to the Fury and took a little bit of chunk damage from Bayroneri, though. You have plenty of poke if you have that Merlin on your team. So thought about it, but then thought twice once they realized how much damage would be turned around. Both teams, they returned to 5 strong. But Gore, you look at the actives. Elevate burned a lot. Every single active in that last fight used for Elevate, except for Bayroneri's Aegis and Heeed. So something to be mindful of as this Fury continues to get pulled by Locked and Goated.
And that opens up the door for Cyno to make maybe a big returning play to the game. Come in, go for the mid laner, or just go into the back line. Either way is going to be great.
Ooh, there's a double stun from SpreeeN as the Thor slams down and Heeed finds the kill onto Ẓtuart. The ricochet is not enough to save Pegon's life. A nice setup and a nice kill from SpreeeN has found a 2 for none in favor of Elevate. Fury started and likely melted down. Locked and Goated on the rotation though. They're on the Elevate side of the map here. They try to blink in. Bayroneri taken low by Cyno. He's able to flicker away. Quig looking to get the kill onto the Elevate mid laner here, but maybe enough healing and heal from the rest of his team. Bayroneri, the body block's not enough. Quig finds the kill. Traded out though by Nesfor. 2 members on the retreat from Locked and Goated here. And this is a brilliant fight for Elevate, especially if they're able to find a little bit more. A double kill from Nesfor and they grab the Fury, 4 members down from Locked and Goated.
My mind's already in the fire pit. I'm surprised that it's taking Elevate a long time to get over there. Maybe they feel too low to try and engage. They'll come over. Pyromancer is much easier to take down. I just want to wait for Bayroneri to come back. Having that Merlin is a huge asset in melting down objectives. And it's just, it's SpreeeN, man. I mean,
yeah,
what are you going to do about it when you get 2 stuns on the back line and it's on 2 important? It's both carries, Dave. I mean, come on.
Right, I mean, you ask how the double hunter comp is going to work. It doesn't when they're getting stunned out by SpreeeN in a lot of these fights. You know, this guy is really taking over these games. I mean, 3, 2, and 6. It's not the, you know, the stars in the sky of a slash line, but at 3, 2, and 6, he's impacted 9 out of the 11 kills in this game. This Thor continues to just show up in these fights for Elevate, and I imagine it will. They did end up rotating over to that Pyromancer, they being Elevate, to grab that for themselves. And where Locked and Goated had a 2k plus gold lead, you know, 5-10 minutes ago, Elevate have pulled this one back in their favor to about 3,000 for them, 4,000 on the XP charts. And this one, it's sort of that intangible, right? It feels like Elevate are just in control.
And it's kind of frustrating because there's so much potential from Locked and Goated. Like, every engagement seems like, oh, this is the one. And then it's something like SpreeeN does, something that Nesfor does, I mean, half the time has been SpreeeN or Heeed more often than not, where they just decide, you know what, actually, we're not gonna lose this fight. We don't want to even consider it a possibility for us. And then Locked and Goated, you know, you lose Pegon and Ẓtuart, or you lose RelentlessOne and Cyno, and there's just nothing to follow up with after that. So my eyes still falling onto a jungler this game. But it's not necessarily Cyno as the one that's the problem. It's SpreeeN and this Thor. The combination is just too much to handle.
And a bit different look at the relics for Heeed as well on this Vamana. Last game it was teleport and blink, if I remember correctly, for RelentlessOne. This time opting for the Thorns. And again, it's sort of maybe the situation of this game where Elevate has just been in these fights a little bit better. He just hasn't really been challenged all that much as another fight brings out. Down comes crashing SpreeeN into the midst he goes. Where else but Ẓtuart finds the opening kill. A double kill for the Hachiman. Elevate.
Good kill.
You thought they had the lead, but Locked and Goated, they take a great fight and find a couple kills for their Hachiman.
Again, the potential has been there. It was just finally getting the execution, and I guess it was having your hunters rotate over. And most notably, I mean, the conversation we had earlier was, is one gonna go pin, one go crit, both go crit? They've both gone pin, which I think is the least likely of all of those options. But it's going to help them in terms of the tower siege. It will help them get a gold lead back in their favor.
Our Giant taken for free from Locked and Goated there, and Elevate pay the price to the tune of 2 deaths. Right as I bring up Heeed and how he's kind of been unchallenged in these fights, and the Thorns have been doing good work for him, does get killed off kind of early on in that engagement. Second, though, to Shiaaaaa, who is the first death. So Elevate, you know, that gold lead that was pushing 3k for them now has been brought back. The scales ever tipping here in this set for, but now with the Fire Giant buff on Locked and Goated, I think they've taken themselves right back into the driver's seat of this game.
You know, normally I would say, hey, Phoenix defenses, like, that's the typical kind of drawing line where we see things kind of get stalled out no matter what region or what game you watch. It's just difficult to break into a Phoenix. You have 2 hunters, both with a lot of penetration online, both with a Fire Giant buff. Towers and Phoenixes should be scared right now, out of their mind. It doesn't even matter about Elevate. Like, the fight will determine a lot as to whether or not they can target someone like Ẓtuart, get rid of Pegon to make it a little less easy for Locked and Goated. But, like, what? This tier 1 is a sneeze away from death in consideration. And honestly, these tier 2s won't be worth defending in a lineup like Locked and Goated have. It's just going to be too easy for them to multiply.
It's going to be quick, but Elevate are moving out of their base, maybe looking for a fight. But they have Cyno in the right-hand lane, is going to push down this tower. FG buff going to help him out there. So, I mean, if you are Elevate, are you nervous about taking some of these fights? I mean, obviously the objective secure for Locked and Goated is awesome between the 2 hunters they have. But are you at a point in this game where you still feel comfortable maybe moving out and taking some of these fights in the jungle?
I think if you can isolate them, like with 4 people here, this like I'm out of this tier 2 already. Like my mind is this tier 2's gone, especially when one of them's 100. When there's 3, maybe when there's 2, it's definitely something you could try to fight. In fact, I wouldn't even mind seeing them try to collapse in on Cyno, even though he's a little tanky. He just got a lot of health, not a lot of protections in that loadout, in that build right now. So it's maybe easier for them to collapse on him. But 5 people strong, and again, 2 hunters with Fire Giant, towers don't exist.
Yeah, it's about as methodical as it goes for Locked and Goaded there. There were 4 towers remaining prior to that push. Make it 0 now for Elevate. 3 exposed Phoenix is here for them. Talk about the shift in this game. Primal Fury is going to get taken up as well by Locked and Goaded. Just give themselves a little bit more of an advantage. And I think, you know, not only the turnaround in this game, but from Cyno, a lot of the advantage that Elevate had found were picking off Cyno early and often and putting Locked and Goaded at a disadvantage. While it hasn't been the flashiest Cabrakan, I think Cyno has done a great job of staying alive and finding good fights for his team in the last 5 or so minutes.
And honestly, again, him and RelentlessOne, I think their slash lines are not going to look great throughout the remainder of the game. Because realistically, they're not here to get kills. They're here to set them up and to help control the game for someone like Pegon or Ẓtuart to be able to come in. And Stuart's 5-1-1 right now, right? Like, he's doing exactly what you want, which was he held himself very solidly in lane, was able to have a pretty decent early lead over Nesfor, and now he's translating that into a very clean late game where he's just finding these hits, very solid damage, and it's a lot of pin, so even targets like Heeed are easy for him to kill off.
Watch out, Heeed has to use the Colossal Fury to try to disengage the fight. Cyno drops the ultimate as well. Nesfor is going to turn out the fights on the Locked and Goaded and give Elevate a fighting chance in this one, but Bayroneri has to flicker away. Oh, tons of damage. Big stun onto the back line of Elevate there. Health bars disappearing. Quig and Cyno have found themselves Bayroneri. The ground slams get it done for Cabrakan this time. Another kill onto Nesfor. Low health bars, but 5 men strong, pouring down this right side Phoenix.
I like this call. You have the minions there, so backdoor protections are going to be gone. You don't need to worry about the Fire Giant. Well, it's not even up for another minute, so they're not falling back. They're just going to push for it.
Or they might be able to end this game. 40 seconds on the death timer. 3 members remaining from Elevate. Titan now under attack. Comes out of the base here. Can you find any kills? There with Cyno, 3-man stun, returns the favor onto Locked and Goaded, but down, gets rid of Heeed.
That'll do it.
2 members remaining from Elevate. You got a Thor, you got a Sobek, Gormizer. I don't think that's just enough. Locked and Goaded with the swings and throws of this game are able to clean it up and tie up this set.
I mean, when it comes down to burning objectives and the way that last fight goes, specifically RelentlessOne hitting a very large ult for his team to stay in that fight and to just shred health bars, I think what we just saw was a very good testament to why a lot of pin builds in Hunters, if you have 2 of them, will kill towers, kill Phoenixes, and kill a Vamana in the right circumstances. I mean, everything just kind of fell into place for him.
So that means Crit is dead and nobody ever needs to build it ever again, right?
Rage is what, 2,300 gold? I'm still going for it, honestly. I just think that the way that they're going to be going through was very solid for him. That is a very risky lineup, and honestly, there was a lot of times where pressure was not in favor of Locked and Goaded. It was Ẓtuart as well as Pegon. Like, Pegon picked up more of those kills towards the end. Ẓtuart had his going into the end there. Them working in tandem really set it apart, and it's the structure damage column you should look at more than anything. Pegon had 5,000. Ẓtuart was behind him at 2,300. They were just burning anything and everything down.
Yeah, and damage pretty evenly spread as well, and it's actually RelentlessOne who found most of it. A lot of that early game pressure onto Heeed, kind of the tug and pull of RelentlessOne in that solo lane. The Chang'e, I mean, it wasn't the flashiest. I mean, a lot of our emphasis in the magnifying glass on this game was on that double hunter.
Yeah.
But between the Chang'e, the Cabrakan, the double hunter, Locked and Goaded, they're able to get it done here in game number 2, and that means we've got more of this thrilling set, game number 3, right after this break. Here we go into picks and bans for game 3 between Locked and Goaded and Elevate. And the tug of war that was game 2 and the tug of war now that is this set is going to come to a close here, Gormizer, in game number 3. This is very contested. You know, I think a lot of people were kind of questioning the way that some of these teams would fare in this region, but between Locked and Goated and Elevate today, they've both shown the ability to win some big games.
And they've both shown that, one, they can cultivate a lead, they can play from behind, and they can retake the lead. Like,
yeah.
The tug of war is the perfect term for it, like you had mentioned, just because of the fact that it really has just been back and forth between these two teams. Until one of them is like Fire Giant, they broke down a Phoenix and looking like they're about to kill the Titan, I can't really count anyone as like winning a game. But I think Locked and Goated learned a lot from that last game, mainly in what picks and bans will work and what things they need to get rid of. I think Elevate kind of noticed that even though you can win a lot of early game fights, there's certain matchups that might just get out of hand for you. I don't think they were expecting the Chang'e. I don't think they were expecting the Cabrakan. And I think because of that, plus the double hunter, I mean, it just threw them for a loop.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting either of them either, so I don't know if Elevate were. Mirror bans, though, throughout the first 6 for both of these teams. Locked and Goated the same 3. Elevate the same 3 as game number 2. Xing has played a big role in this set so far. Locked and Goated are going to prioritize him first overall.
I mean, hey, it's worked well for you. Honestly, did really well in game 1, even though they didn't win it. Quig had a 4-man ult last game. That's really, realistically, the only justification I should have for a Xing, but it was huge in terms of keeping them alive and afloat. And I think this game it's going to be just as solid for them.
Well, I'm excited to see Persephone locked in as well, with kind of the, I don't know, you call it 4, 5, 6 maybe mid laners that we've seen kind of plug and play here and there depending on the way the bans go. Persephone has been in that conversation. Such a difficult kit to play, but can have massive impact on the game when played at that highest level. So I love Locked and Goated moving into the Persephone pick here.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how exactly they're going to be able to pick it up. We've seen Persephone and why she's a top pick from a lot of these players because of what she can apply and the control that she can bring. And we've also seen why some teams shouldn't maybe prioritize her as much because some people she's high skill cap. And if you are just a little below it, it's just not going to click the way that it needs to, and it can end up hurting you. Locked and Goated, though, have showcased a lot of talent in the last couple of games. I expect to see a lot out of it. And now they've got the Vamana on their side once again. Even though it didn't go too well early on, I think that with Persephone and the Xing, it's just looking like a good lineup.
Yeah, but whoever picks Vamana loses in this set, apparently, because Elevate had him.
Wait, you're right. Actually, wait, get him out, get him out.
They lost.
Already, Quig is going to hit the button, dude.
What was that? What is that?
My GG button.
What does it say, GG?
Yeah, it's my GG button.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yes, at the end of this game, I'm not even going to call it. I'm just going to let you smash. I'm going to let you sound the horns there towards the end in game number 3.
That's my anti-tilt button. Whenever I get really, really mad, I'll hit that, and it makes me not mad as much. Because if this button can make fun of me, I have no reason to be mad.
I love the fact that you have a GG button just waiting on your desk, and we'll put it to use here in game number 3. Let's jump on in and see how these teams are able to do. And Achilles picked up as well for Elevate towards the end, and it's going to be the jungle Achilles for SpreeeN. So the first time we're not going to see him on Thor here in the set going up against Cyno on that Ali. Should be an interesting matchup to look out for with SpreeeN pivoting onto that Achilles.
It's gonna be interesting to see what SpreeeN can do. I mean, this Thor has been so impactful for them. Even though they lost last game, it was one of the best picks they had coming into them. But executes that are going to be online, it's not going to necessarily be a huge counter or anything, but it can help deal with Cyno, help deal with RelentlessOne, help deal with Quig.
Oh, Bayroneri.
Okay, wow.
Hello there, buddy. Has to get back behind his tier 1 tower. Cyno looking for that ever-popular level 1 gank, right? And Bayroneri is not happy about that one. He has to go back to base real early on in this one. Pegon free lane here just for a few moments. And a bit of a different pivot, Goremizer, from what we had seen in the previous 2 games in this set with a duo lane throughout the first 5 or so levels. This game, though, has the supports kind of back to that invade style, just trying to make life difficult in the enemy jungle. And looks like was even able to steal away that blue buff.
And that's what you want it for, right? And a lot of it has been, hey, we don't necessarily care about steals. Getting a buff is huge. It's just, can we force you to back? Can we slow you down? What can we do to kind of control your jungle? But sometimes you do get that steal, and it feels even better because now Vamana, RelentlessOne had a pretty interesting and solid amount of control during the beginning of the last game with the Chang'e. Now he doesn't have that mana buff. He doesn't have that matchup maybe going in his favor outright. And even though we've seen maybe some ganks over there to slow him down, nothing's coming to help him. Cyno's not looking over here. Quig's not looking over here. So I anticipate he's going to, again, kind of get off to a slow start.
Well, you know where Cyno's been looking is back to that mid lane. He nearly got first blood about a minute into this one on the Bayroneri and has returned. Bayroneri still does have those beads. Didn't have to use those off the early gank, but you can kind of see the mindset of Cyno. You know, why wait till late game if I can find some early presence here in this one? Yep. So Bayroneri, I think, has to be mindful of this Kali that obviously has shown the emphasis on maybe collapsing early.
And I think she's got a decent amount of damage. I think she's going to be able to come through. Again, Kali doesn't make my brain scream, hey, early game, let's go fight. Right. But, I mean, if you can get a kill like that early on, especially because it was onto her target, like, yeah, you started to question, like, maybe I could even dive this tower if I'm going to get the healing out of it. Yeah. There's moments where Kali, I think, is going to shine early on. And if Cyno can start off the game that way, it only gets better with time. And the more items online, the deadlier she gets. I think Elevator looking at another game of, hey, kill Cyno to just try and ensure that we don't lose.
I agree. I was going to say, I think that this is very back to the kind of tones of game number one, where Cyno was on that Bakasura, and it was the fights where he had massive impact. Locked and Goated were really winning those fights, and then eventually Elevate were like, hey, let's just kill Cyno, and then the rest of the fight will go in our favor. And Kali, a similar playstyle, you could argue, to that Bakasura. So I think this is one where Cyno will need to have a pretty big impact on some of these fights. And, you know, I like Shiaaaaa kind of pivoting over to that Terra, another god that I think plays very well in that Guardian role, opting for more invade, as we talked about early in this game. But I think Terra brings a lot to the table when you look at a little bit of CC and some good healing for her team as well.
I mean, the fact that Shiaaaaa has been able to bring not only everything that you expect out of the Terra, the CC plus the healing, as you had just pointed out. I mean, Shiaaaaa has been so great at kind of second jungling right now. I mean, he's been over there a little bit more than SpreeeN, but takes the speed buff, took the last blue buff, is in here again looking like they just secured a blue buff away. I mean, Elevate are playing this in a way right now that theoretically they should have a massive lead, although it hasn't cultivated into one. It's going to slow down Locked and Goated. I'm going to be looking at these experience numbers, I think, a little bit more as time goes on.
You're telling me 88 gold isn't a massive lead score? That seems...
Ooh, I don't know, dude. That's like a whole horde, man.
Right, and you know...
That's a lot of vision.
That vision turns into a gank, turns into a kill. You know, we're thinking best case scenario here in this case. But Heeed, yeah, off to a bit of a rough start. Has got both of his blue buffs invaded on up to this point here in this game. And that's important, or rather, RelentlessOne has had both of his blue buffs invaded on. So a tough start for that Vamana, where Heeed has been able to move himself into about, you know, one, maybe a half level lead, depending on when that comes up. And again, it's similar tones where RelentlessOne has gone for that blink first, which is what you maybe want in that Vamana to get into the backline. But if you're going to get poked out in this short lane and you don't have that TP to get back, you know, it makes your life a little bit more difficult.
And as of right now, difficult lives are just synonymous with Vamana in the solo lane today.
I guess,
man. As it has been, it has not been comfortable for him. I think we need to see, as much as it feels weird to say it, but Cyno needs to kind of keep more alert. This jungle has not been in his control. And that's the fact that they've been losing that many buffs and they still are just, what, 200, 300 gold behind now is going to mean that, hey, if he can just wrap that one back under his own belt, then we're definitely going to see Locked and Goated be complete contenders with this one. Elevate, even though they've been playing it well, haven't done enough to make this scream their favor just yet.
I agree. RelentlessOne has done a decent job here, maybe even setting up a gank. Cyno has made his way through. Blink on in from the Kali. Locks down Heeed. Health bar. Drops low. Up, down from Cyno. Nesfor shuts out the life, but RelentlessOne, he finds the kill nonetheless. SpreeeN has rejoined the engagement. Shiaaaaa is here as well. 3 members have Locked and Goated close by, and that's a good route from Shiaaaaa just to disengage this fight, but it's first blood. Hey, that's over to the Vamana, who up to this point has had a rough time.
Hey, that's the start he needs too, right? I mean, you are losing your blue buff every single time. You don't have that teleport to get you into lane. You need something to go your way. Get him ahead in his lane. Get him And just that small one level lead can now be, again, farmed and cultivated into something much larger. I expect to see RelentlessOne try to do something like that. It was a good gank as well. And man, get assists, get kills onto this Kali, get her ahead, get Cyno some items. That, again, it's a formula for success for Locked and Goated. It's just whether or not they can do it. I think last game it was not necessarily, I don't know the right word for it, because fluke isn't the right word for it, but it was definitely a good amount of tripping up elevate early on in the matchups that didn't necessarily translate to either of those god picks working out well for them. I mean, the Cabrakan just kind of set up kills, which admittedly is what you're going to need for him, but it didn't have anything flashy on its own. Kali needs to be the flashy one, so I want to see that switch flip over for Cyno.
Sometimes all it takes is one kill to kind of come around the lane. Heeed prior turning into the rage form had been poked out pretty decently by RelentlessOne, who has used his movement ability just to try to poke out some more damage on Heeed. Watch out, SpreeeN is rotating through, could get back in behind RelentlessOne here, maybe looking for the re-engage. Colossal Fury will time out. SpreeeN thinks twice about that one. But a little bit more action in the solo lane, Gore, than maybe what we've been used to. SpreeeN moving in to maybe re-engage on this fight, but it's just going to be the stun. And then the disengage from him. So at least hanging over here by the solo lane. Both junglers early in this game have put some presence there.
I mean, there's making sure that you're known over here. Again, will stop RelentlessOne from maybe trying to take over the lane. Of course, being able to force like an ult out of Vamana as well, try to force the sustain that he has gone. Then maybe there's a little bit more options for you now as SpreeeN to come back over here and get Heeed back in the game, which, I mean, he's not necessarily even out of it, just a little bit behind right now.
Right.
It's just forcing that teleport out, as we had mentioned, Vamana not having it. You feel it the same way. If you don't have teleport available for you and you're Chulainn, man, getting set back to base is the worst case scenario.
Cyno hanging close by. There is a ward, but doesn't look like it spotted him. Oh, he's just on the edge of that one. So Bayroneri, none the wiser here. Suddenly it's been spotted out. Blinks in on through. Plenty of lockdown into this one onto Shiaaaaa, but the dash out might just be enough. Quig underneath the tier 1 tower finds the kill. Kill number 2 here for Locked and Goated. Are you able to get out alive? Quig says, yes, I am. A little bit more. Cyno goes underneath the tower. Out of this ultimate, is there enough damage to turn it around on the Bayroneri? Up, down, yes there is. I'll take a full health bar, please. SpreeeN, he helps him up, gets the knockup, turns around the kill onto Cyno, but it's a 2-for-1 as we stand for Locked and Goated.
Well, I will say, a knockup into an execute is a surefire way to get a kill, right? There is no way to juke that one.
Yeah, you don't miss that.
For Cyno, he's not going to be able to walk away too happily from that, but getting a kill again onto your target, onto Kali, has the Brawler's beat stick, so he's got some pin coming in, as well as that anti-heal.
Oh yeah.
This is a good start for him. It doesn't even matter that he dies there, honestly, going back, being able to finish this off in the right hands, which so far it's been the right hands for Cyno. This Kali is looking into a position that she'll be able to get 2 to 3 kills in a team fight, and I think she is well on her way to make plays like that.
Where we've seen a lot of action, not only in the short lane, but some in the mid lane as well. We haven't talked about Persephone all that much, maybe a little bit in picks and bans. What do you kind of make of this matchup, her versus Merlin? I mean, things relatively even here. Dumore picked up first from Bayroneri. Chronos Pendant picked up first from Pegon, and aside from some jungle ganks, not all that much action, and both have seemed somewhat even.
That's kind of that question of what you want out of them, right? Like, Merlin is going to bring Burn, which is going to make it much more difficult for Quig and RelentlessOne, and then Gold Fury, Fire Giant, anything like that to stand as tall as they are. But Persephone, man, that ult, it doesn't matter where you're fighting or what you're fighting, well-placed Persephone ult will either win you that fight, could win you the game, depending on how late it gets.
Oh, Nesfor tried the ultimate for the extended range. He wasn't able to finish off the kill, but maybe starts off the fight for Elevate elsewhere on the map. The Locked and Goated, they're able to kite their way out of that fight, and some good kind of fadeaway damage there from Pegon is going to get the kill onto Shiaaaaa. Opens up the door even further. The Fed Persephone, I mean, I'm not going to call 1-0 and 2 Fed, but you talked about Persephone that's maybe build even more of a lead here. One you definitely have to be mindful of, especially when the rest of the setup is there. RelentlessOne caught out, stunned down by SpreeeN. Colossal Fury, not enough. Elevate, they find themselves a return kill here, and that's the second in this game for SpreeeN on that Achilles, so good return gank there to pull one back.
And that's why that execute is so potent in this game. It's not just going to be good for trying to take down any of the tanks that it comes through. It's good for burning through that ult. The sustain is going to be there for RelentlessOne, but it's not going to be enough to just burst him out of that execute range. And so you don't need that last like 800 damage or so, you know, to kill him off. Just execute him and move on with your life. And that gives SpreeeN 2 kills. Depending on the scenarios that we'll see late game, that opens him up to maybe kind of chain that and chase other people down. It's kind of a dangerous scenario that could start to collapse under Locked and Goated's feet if SpreeeN is able to kind of keep up this pace.
One more Tier 1 tower has made maybe a little bit more confident here. Cyno jumps in, gets the stun onto Heeed, and the low health here from the Chulainn will become 0 in just a moment. So another well-timed gank from Cyno. Stay aggressive in this short lane and sets up the second kill of the game for this Vamana. This Kali, man, he's really made his impact all over this map.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing Cyno needs, what Kali needs. It's time and gold. If he can just buy himself a little bit of both of those, well, you can't buy gold, you just have to earn it the good old-fashioned way. But if he can farm up enough and maybe buy himself the time that he needs to get those items online. Brawlers is one of those items, like typically you want maybe some more attack speed on Kali. Again, kind of equating it back to that Professor we saw in game 1, where you're going to need burn and you're going to need attack speed to help kill people off. The Brawlers is going to be decent to help try and fight some of the same, but as of right now, he doesn't have the same power curve.
That was like 2 auto attacks on the Bayroneri. You see that Thor disappear. Cyno set his ultimate if need be, uses it here, and he's going to try to use it. Get himself out of the fight. A little bit of healing, enough actually to shrug off that final shot there, and Cyno might get out alive, but a well-timed gank from Heeed into the mid lane, shuts down the jungler, and SpreeeN gets the kill as well. Quig falls, Elevate, they pull back 2 more. RelentlessOne has found Bayroneri, and Heeed is there for some peel for his mid laner, and that is the Fury started up. Gold Fury, first overall for Elevate, looking at it, but RelentlessOne still in the back line is going to make them turn their heads elsewhere. Elsewhere's more, and Persephone ultimate is going to set up a kill. Locked and Goated have shut down SpreeeN this time. Fielding as well from that shell is going to keep them in this fight a little bit longer. RelentlessOne stunned down. Good setup there from Shiaaaaa, but Pegon still in this fight. Another kill set up by that Persephone. This one is messy. Kills all across the board. Locked and Goated. They find a couple. Elevate, though, they find one extra.
He's going to go ahead and spend some of that time planting some seeds, falling back as he does go down there using that passive. And, you know, Dave, Tug of War, again, it's so symbolic of this game. Locked and Goated had a lead, and now it's, what, I see maybe 30, 40, less than 100 gold separating these two teams. 92 now, as some of the farm is going to come through. Locked and Goated have a slight lead over what you're going to see in Elevate. It's not enough to write home about, and it's the fact that they can build one, lose one, then Elevate can take one, lose one. Like, it is so much of a strength check for both of these teams.
I agree.
I'm almost at the point where I would just be like, you can check out until 20 minutes and see where they're going because of how close they keep this game. You never know where it's going to go. One lead doesn't mean enough for the either team.
Well, it's such a situational question. I mean, so much can go right, wrong, depends on individual play. But purely looking at compositions, if the game kind of stagnates for a little bit, who are you maybe feeling more comfortable with going into that late game?
Man, on an even playing field, I feel much more comfortable with Locked and Goated. Persephone and Kali, that's a combo that's going to be worth writing home about.
Cyno maybe turning around the kill onto Heeed there. I'm excited about that Kali as well, and Heeed takes plenty of damage there, but doesn't die. Nesfor has to use the ultimate to heal for his solo laner here. Just hanging close by. Persephone ult just wide there, and looking for it from Pegon, so well thought out, but no connection. But I agree with you, Gore. I think Cyno, into this late game, even if things kind of stagnate over the next few minutes, once that Kali starts swinging, it's going to be difficult. SpreeeN, he's the latest reminder of that. Stun out onto Cyno, saves his life. Ultimate used to disengage. RelentlessOne blinks back through in the back line. Cyno still very low. SpreeeN gets a little bit of help from Shiaaaaa, and he has to blink out of the fight as well. And this one ends with no dead Achilles, despite that health bar being tiny. Shiaaaaa was able to provide enough support there as the Guardian, and Elevate, they escape another death.
The fact that Cyno's getting away with a lot of this without having to use his ult as well is huge for them in terms of team fights.
He's patient.
It's kind of keeping up that ability to re-engage and come back in and keep doing these Kali things. Now with the Haze and Katana online, I mean, you're almost exactly where you want to be. You have enough to chase them down, lock them down, enough power behind you to make sure you're getting a lot of damage out. The slash line doesn't reflect well how well he's going to continue doing here. And with that ult available, I think it makes it a lot more deadly for Elevate than they know of right now.
Well, despite Gold Fury being pulled a moment ago, was never taken. Look at Cyno. He's feeling aggressive. Onto Bayroneri, he goes, but has to use his ultimate to stay alive. SpreeeN turns some damage around onto Pegon elsewhere, is down the kill. Onto Shiaaaaa, enough peel onto Cyno, saves the life of Bayroneri, but RelentlessOne still finds himself in the backline, and that's the kill that shuts down the mid laner. It is a 2-for-1 in favor of Locked and Goated here. Only Cyno is down. Four members rather of Locked and Goated have found the remaining 3 of Elevate. This could be a sweeping fight for the blue side. SpreeeN, he's likely to fall here. Oh, some sidesteps from RelentlessOne. Gets him out of the waiting arms of Heeed, and SpreeeN, instead of falling, just going to turn heads, and Locked and Goated, they get away with some there. A 2-for-1 with Heeed still under duress underneath this tier 1 tower. Ẓtuart's looking for it. Hit your final shot. Yes, please. Heeed finally goes down. And that's the 3rd for Locked and Goated in this fight.
Ẓtuart's doing the same thing he was doing last game. It's kind of nothing over there in the duo lane. We honestly can ignore it for a while just because of nothing's been going on. Yeah, they just farm up. And then that Bloodforge, which, again, you know, you've seen the conversation. Do you want Trans? Do you want Devos? Do you want Bloodforge? I think the power spike that he's getting from the Bloodforge, the executioner he has online, and just the way he's playing Hachiman is giving him such control and allowing him to dive. In a moment like that, you're under a tower, but you know you can get the kill if you just get a couple more autos. That shield saves your life, and it sets you up for at least a Fury, maybe the Pyro.
Pyromancer pulled. Elevate steal this one away. Well thought maybe from Locked and Goated, but Elevate sniffed it out, realizing that Locked and Goated may be going back. We're probably rotating towards that Pyro anyway. So silver lining in what was a Locked and Goated fight is Elevator able to steal away that Pyromancer, but the gold lead for us once extended to about 3.2k, maybe one of the larger leads we've seen this early on in this game. But if we've learned anything throughout the first 2 games of this set, I don't know if that really means all that much if Locked and Goated aren't going to be able to capitalize on it, but sort of that intangible we keep talking about, they're definitely in control of it.
And it's going to translate more or less into the items. Chin size finish here for Cyno. You see Ẓtuart starting up what could potentially be an Aussie or a chin size, depending on what route he wants to go. If he's going pin like he did last game, could very well be the chin size to kind of match with this Kali. And then, again, if I'm Heeed, if I'm Shiaaaaa, or if I am an objective that is on the map, I'm starting to shake in my boots with the amount of pin that's going to come through. And he does finish off the chin size there. So it's just going to be hard-hitting autos. It's not going to be huge splash damage like you see out of crit. It's just going to be consistent hundreds of damage coming down from those. Which, between the Kali and the Hachiman, it's going to be a lot to deal with. Any good CC means that should be a kill.
This Fire Giant started from Locked and Goated. Plenty of gold and level leads across that lineup. Pegon tosses out the ultimate, doesn't connect, but Bayroneri is going to melt down nonetheless. It's the back line. It's RelentlessOne here, and Cyno uses his ult and is able to stay alive. Some shielding as well provides him just a little bit of extra longevity. RelentlessOne, he goes back in. Pegon finds the final shot there. And SpreeeN for a double kill on Pegon. They're going to back themselves off. Low health bar score. They could be thinking about a Fire Giant here, maybe opting just for the tier 2 tower, but they are positioning themselves towards that fire.
It's how much health do we have? Can we do it? Do you think we have the damage? And when I see green, green, green for the mid, the support, and your carry, that's enough for me. RelentlessOne can zone. It's a dangerous game for him because he's so incredibly low, but it does keep away the Xbalanque, and you need to keep away Shiaaaaa because he's way too many of those kind of Terra steals this year, but luckily, Locked and Goated aren't going to have to worry about that.
And that is Fire Giant secured 20 minutes into this game for Locked and Goated. What was a 3.2k gold lead a few moments ago? It's extended to about 6,000 here. So Locked and Goated, they're back in control. 3 tier 2 towers remaining, 11,000 on the XP differential as well. This is probably the widest gap we've seen. Maybe save the Link tier game 1, but this is one where Locked and Goated, if they just keep doing what they have been doing, and I think a lot of that is on Cyno as well, I think that this game is one that they'll feel comfortable finishing out. especially you can do this to Nesfor, who has to use some of his disengage, but not enough to escape Cyno. And now you got a one-man advantage and plenty of towers to take.
That's going to be a solid pick early on. The only thing that gets elevated, and you know, you equated this back to game 1, but the only thing that keeps elevated in this is if they can do what game 1 did again, which is win a fight around the fire giant, and the next few minutes you're probably going to lose a couple towers, maybe a Phoenix here. You have to win the next fire giant fight. You can't risk losing anything before this because otherwise you're not going to.
Well, the risk is on your doorstep. Oh my, the health is disappearing here from Elevate. Cyno has found himself the kill. He turns it around. That's a 1-for-1 right now, but RelentlessOne is just zoning back out into the fountain. SpreeeN and Shiaaaaa, the only 2 members that are left alive. 4 strong from Locked and Goated still. Left side Phoenix down to about 5% HP. Quig was picking it up just a little bit longer than maybe he was hoping to. 3 seconds on Nesfor's respawn, and they might be able to pull one back for themselves. For SpreeeN, he has to use the execute to disengage. Nesfor back from the fountain here, and I think Locked and Goated maybe take that as a cue. Tried to get out of the base, but a good lockdown from Shiaaaaa sets up the kill onto the RelentlessOne. But it is still a left side Phoenix down and 1 more kill on the Heeed.
And that's a solid staggered death. Right now it's going to be a 3v3, almost a 3v4, considering Bayroneri's respawn timer. Then you have Cyno coming back, but that's 30 seconds without RelentlessOne that you have to buy time. And when you look at that, 2 minutes and 45 left until Fire Giant respawns. It's only 1 minute and 40 left until that Fire Giant buff disappears from the remaining members of Locked and Goated. And if 30 seconds of that is spent without your solo laner, yeah, maybe this Gold Fury can come through, this Primal Fury that's respawning can be in your favor, maybe that Pyromancer. And maybe a tier 2, but you're not looking at the Phoenixes as much anymore if you're Locked and Goated right now.
And I think Quig, sensing that, is going to use this moment to just kind of deep ward on the Elevate side of the map, and Cyno moves himself over to the blue buff side. And I sort of agree with what you said earlier about Cyno, and that, you know, 3, 4, and 9, obviously he has 12 affected kills and only 4 deaths, so, you know, call it a 3 KDA, however you want to look at that. It's so much more impact, I think, than what his slash line tells. I think that this Kali has hit just the right buttons for Locked and Goated. Really allowed them to get in this fight. Pegon, I think we'd be remiss as well if we didn't talk about Persephone and the big impact he's had.
Yeah, I mean, it's a ton of damage. 5, 1, and 6 right now, so he's been very well isolated to make sure he doesn't get picked off. But again, it's these ults that I think have been paying dividends for him.
Oh, yeah.
As well as, and this is a really weird, it feels weird to describe this way, but where he's planting his garden and how he's setting that up for fights has just kind of contributed to the damage that he's been able to do with the Gold.
Planting the garden, then harvesting kills. Unfortunately, that ultimate swings just what... Yeah, right. As if anything else would have happened to us. Pegon sends that one just to the left of his intended target, but it is mid tier 2 tower taken down. Right side tier 2 tower being looked at here. Locked and Goated. Maybe not looking for quite this engagement just over the wall. So have to be careful. Technically, health-wise, Elevate a little bit in the lead here. Shiaaaaa as well will be able to help sustain them back up. But Cyno, I mean, that's a sneaky low health bar. That Kali health bar, never quite as low as it seems, especially if Cyno is able to find the kill that he's looking for. Just working in the backline as RelentlessOne moves himself through. Nesfor turns out the lights for Elevate. Titan under attack by some minions here, though. Locked down underneath their tier 2 tower is Elevate. Cyno looking for some more onto Nesfor, and he finds it. 1 down. SpreeeN rotating back into the fight, but Heeed falls as well. Cyno eventually finds death at the hand of SpreeeN. A double kill for the Achilles. Could be the saving fight that Elevate need, but Ẓtuart puts that one to bed. 3 down now for Elevate. A right side here. Power falls as well. And you got Bayroneri and Shiaaaaa trying to defend.
Honestly, you're in a questionable area. If you get this Phoenix, you might be able to just walk in right afterward and go for the Titan. You don't necessarily have as much damage as you want, but you got Ẓtuart, and that might be enough for you. It just depends on if you can get this kill. Bayroneri goes deep, but he pays for it with his life.
Bayroneri does fall to the hands of Quig here, so now it is just Shiaaaaa. But the health bar is low enough for Locked and Goated. They need to be careful about totally sieging down this Titan. Gore points it out. Fire minions pouring in that left side lane in towards the Elevate base. Gonna have some on the right lane as well. The left side Phoenix will be respawning soon. That's a well thought out fight there from Locked and Goated. Just staggers them long enough, and you know, while you don't get all that much damage on the Titan, Gore, I mean, you can't just shrug that off. That's about a quarter of its health taken away.
Yeah, and even being able to find the reset, it's going to make everyone on Elevate question where their priorities should be. 2 more waves of fire minions walking down the left lane. That means you can't leave it alone right now. You have to be able to push at least both of those away, or else he might lose his Phoenix one more time. And that means at least one member of Elevate won't be over here in the Fire Giant pit. And right now, there's no members of Elevate over here in the Fire Giant.
Are you surprised that they're not moving out to try to contest this one? I mean, they have to know something is going on. There's no way everyone from Locked and Goated is just idly back in the base. Would you have liked to see a defense attempt there?
I feel like you could have thrown someone over there, right? Maybe you don't full-on commit the entire team when you have one Phoenix still down. You have to defend in the left lane as well. You can't commit the 4 other members there, but you can commit something. Yeah, like just try to get the steal in there. That being said, it's definitely more of a death sentence if you try to defend, or if you try to commit to a Fire Giant steal versus defense right here. They could successfully fight under Phoenix.
RelentlessOne has everyone looking at him right now underneath this mid lane Phoenix. Right side has the Fire Minions soon to be joining the fight. Heeed taken very low. Lights down from Nesfor. Mid lane Phoenix is down. Pegon, beautiful ultimate. Locks down Shiaaaaa. 3 members down from Elevate. Maybe 4 if Heeed is not able to get the healing he needs. I don't think it's going to matter, Gormizer. The fight will continue here as SpreeeN dashes right on through, but the up down from Cyno, and they're just going to ignore the Titan. It's Locked and Goated. They're able to take game 3 and thus take the set.
And I like Țtuart's mindset more than anything. There's 5 members of Locked and Goated on the Titan. 4 of them peel off to go for a fight, and Țtuart's just like, I'm going to keep attacking the Titan, guys. I'm going to try to do whatever he can. And that seems like the way he was oriented in both of those Hachiman games when he came through. Yeah. The fact that he was just so focused, I want to say is the right word, on objective play. The fact that he was able to come through, pick up a lot of kills along the way with that as well. I mean, 5-0 and 11. Țtuart played those in games both times really well in the last 2.
Well, Gore, you didn't hit the GG button,
well,
so
there we go.
There it is. I appreciate you for that one. Well played from Locked and Goated to move back into the set. I think Pegon, I mean, we talked about Cyno so much throughout that game. Țtuart as well doing good damage. RelentlessOne on the top of the damage charts, but I think that Persephone big ultimate there towards the end to really seal up that fight. I think Pegon throughout this set, but especially this game on the Persephone, was a big difference maker.
I'm sorry, I wanted to follow up on that because Persephone's really good, but then I saw 11,000 structure damage from Țtuart, and my mind was kind of crumbled along with, I guess, all of the towers that he happened to be taking that game as well. I guess it just showcases where he was late game. And again, having the Persephone set it up, we happened to call the one ult that ended up whiffing, but a lot of those that locked people down was really, really solid for them. And I think that Persephone, again, in the right hands and at this top level of play is deadly to let through.
Well, Locked and Goated, they take this set, unfortunately, Elevate fall. We do get to see Elevate, though, right after this break. We're going to have game number 3. They're going to be going up against Bloogie and the Woogie, so the second time we'll see them here today. So make sure to stick around. Set number 3 right after this.